I got one, thank you.
Yes, please, thank you. And I'm thinking, man, Lexington, Kentucky, I mean, yeah,
You know, I was looking at this thing and kept looking at it. I don't see that. All of a sudden they sent me that email. And I was
Very interesting.
yeah, I'm sorry. I got it now. Of course, I really got it.
this has been the nicest library. It is. You work for Kentucky?
I got one that squeaks. You want me to give him that one? I'll be getting, I said, who's texting me?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, tell you what. Don't,
What's that indication tonight? You can pray for us when she wants to.
No, I'll let Danny do that. He's up for,
Me and you both, brother. You ready, Karen? We got about 1 minute. Guarantee that's so good and came in the most he had. He'd be air conditioned.
yeah. Well, I don't think anybody ours does. I used to be in the past, he died about 6 months ago. And so we got the pastor before me and him talked, he had. I said, I'm not to let somebody do it on 98. Highly visible.
I'll tell you what, dude, it's just, it makes no sense anymore. You don't ever know. You don't know.
You don't know who's going to do it or for what reason.
Nope.
Kill that.
Danny, that church was 5 miles from the church starting I used to go to. About 8 miles from our house. He's been to Laverne. Mm-hmm. Yep. Like everybody's waiting anxiously. All right, if you would please stand and join us as we say the Pledge of Allegiance and have an invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father, we thank you for this day, Lord, and all your many blessings we ask now as we conduct your business, that you would help us, Lord, to do so in a calm, rational manner, and in a way that's pleasing to you. I ask you to lead and guide us in all things, and ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Okay, before we get going, just a couple of quick announcements. If you haven't already done so, please either turn your phones off or put them on silent to try to minimize interruptions if we can. Also, we will have a 9 o'clock time certain end of the meeting. I don't think we'll have a problem with that tonight, but if we do get to 9 o'clock and have not completed the agenda, any uncompleted items we've moved to next month's agenda. Next thing, minutes. Everybody had a chance to review the minutes? We need a motion, a second.
I'll move we accept.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any other questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. We have announcements? Hello? Kristen,
Oh,
you have any
sorry,
announcements?
no announcements from us, Mr. Chairman.
Item number 1. Looks like there's a request to continue.
That's right, Mr. Chairman. This is the proposed amendments that we had brought to the board a while back, dealing with the major and minor thresholds. And the board had remanded those back to the planning commission for consideration and probably changes. And we are asking for some time to work with the consultant matrix to come up with some alternatives and bring that back on December 11th, 2017.
December 11th or the 14th?
Yes.
The 14th? It has in here the 14th.
12/11, right, Karen? Next planning commission? 12/14, okay, I got 11 here, sorry.
That's okay. We need a motion to continue to December 14th.
Motion to continue.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Do we have any others continued or on the agenda?
We have one request to table, that's item number 5, the South Walton Commerce Park, Lot 13. The applicant has requested that the board table this item
Okay, so tabling is not going to come back up. It's just going away.
for
Right.
now. Right.
Commissioners?
Do we need a motion to table?
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Carries. Next.
That's it. That's it for changes. Then we're on to item 2 if you're ready.
We're ready.
I'm going to let Vivian introduce this. This is the farmer's market ordinance that she's been working on. It was continued from the 12th meeting.
Good evening, Commissioners. Just a very brief history on this. Due to the popularity of farmers markets and therefore the desire to locate some of them on our scenic corridors, we came across the issue of the prohibition of tents. And so we determined to, or the board allowed us to draft an ordinance to make farmers markets allowable, being able to use tents, and we provided some other criteria. We have met with the managers of the farmers markets, worked with them closely, worked with the DRB, and have come to the draft ordinance that you have passed out to you today. It was just passed through DRB last week with their recommendations, and they have been incorporated into the handout that you have in front of you.
For the red line stuff, the stuff that came from them,
No, this is basically...
or just changes generally?
This is just the additions that would be included in the Chapter 13 LDC is what's underlined in red. And it does describe the locations where the farmers markets can be located, and also provides for the types of tents and signage and location, basically.
Okay.
So it was a collaborative effort to get to this point.
Okay. Commissioners have any questions of staff?
Is there any regulation about how long they can have that temporary, is it designated how, the length of time?
Yes, it is, I believe, 4 hours with 1 hour prior to and 1 hour after for setup and takedown.
And how long is the permit good for?
The permit would be good for 1 year. They would do a calendar of events basically through the outdoor event permitting process. And so they would be able to apply just one time a year for the times that they want to have the occurrences at a specific location.
So they can use it all year long?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
It is limited to 2 days per week.
Per location.
Okay, any other questions of staff? All right. Open up for public comment. You can sit down. You can sit down. We're gonna open up for public.
Thank you.
I don't have the folders yet, so has anybody signed up to speak, or does anybody wish to speak on this item? Seeing nobody, I'll close public comments. Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. These will be quasi judicial going into now. Sydney, if you want to swear people in.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Anyone who anticipates testifying on any of the remaining agenda items, sorry, I think it's on now. So anyone who anticipates testifying on any of the remaining agenda items, if you would, at this time, stand and raise your right hand to be sworn in. So that would include anyone who would like to speak during public comments.
Anybody who plans on speaking during public comments or at any other time.
Okay. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide to this board will be the truth? Okay. Whenever you come forward, if you would, please state and spell your last name and state that you've been sworn in.
Okay, item number 3.
Mr. Chairman, before we get started, I forgot that we have our new Assistant County Attorney here
Yes,
with
thank
us
you,
tonight,
Christine.
Heather Chrisman, and she's sitting here with me tonight, so we'll give her a big welcome. Item number 3 is Mulebridge LLC. It's a request to approve by final order. This project's been reviewed by Mr. Bronte. He's here with us tonight, and it's a major development order application for 1,200 square feet of office and storage space on a general commercial property on U.S. Highway 331, off of 331 on Bay Grove Boulevard.
Good evening. As Kristen said, this is a 12,000 square foot storage office space on 1.45 acres. It is in compliance with the comprehensive plan. All comments have been addressed. And the applicant is here to speak if you have any questions with the applicant. And I would like to ask you if you would please enter this staff report into the record.
Accepted.
Thank you, and I will turn it over to the applicant.
Good evening, Ed Stanford with Core Engineering and Consulting. This property lies within a previously platted commercial subdivision, and we are developing on 4 lots within that subdivision, 2 buildings, 2 separate buildings. It's actually less than 12,000 square feet total. It's 11,200 square feet after we address the last comment. So all the stormwater is handled by a master plan. Utilities have been taken to the site, so we're merely putting in parking and a couple of building pads at the end of the day.
Is it office and warehouse?
It's whatever's in it. It's going to be
Whatever you
leasable.
can lease it to.
There you go. Yeah, and so you can't actually do warehousing within that. But what we're looking at doing is single-purpose office. Maybe some sort of sales, and then the rest is maybe product storage, stuff like that. Flex space is really
Right.
what they call it.
Looks good. I think it's a great place to have it too.
Absolutely.
Which subdivision is this part of?
Excuse me?
Which subdivision is this planted part of?
This is the Bay Grove Commercial Park.
Right.
Over there where Chapman used to be.
Half mile north of 331 Bridge.
Great location.
Yep.
Glad to see something happening there.
There's going to be a lot more of those coming up too.
Amen.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
We had nobody sign up to speak. Is there anybody who wishes to address this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comments. Commissioners?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Oh, thank you.
That's probably the easiest one you'll ever have here, right? Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, item number 4 on the agenda is the Rock Hill Road cellular tower. This is a major development, and Renee's not here tonight, so I'll be answering any questions you may have. They are going to be installing a 250-foot tower on 12.9 acres located off of Rock Hill Road. And we are requesting that the staff report be entered into the record.
Accepted. Any commissioners have any questions for staff?
The applicant is here.
Oh, the applicant's here, okay. Well, she's up then.
Good evening, my name is Heidi Nelson. I'm agent on behalf of Branch Towers. We're proposing to build a 75 by 75 compound with a 215 approximately foot access road and a 250 foot self-support tower, lattice tower.
Have you all had any comments from the pub, from neighbors or anything?
No, sir.
No?
Gonna make sure that it's gonna make the self-service up there any better?
Oh, yeah.
What,
I've been there and I know it's bad.
who's it gonna be with? What service?
T-Mobile is our anchor tenant.
Okay.
Is there a chance of maybe some more?
I believe so. We are building it to have 3 carriers in it.
Good. It's needed.
You want to stand in the middle of the road yourself.
You're gonna have to stand in the middle of the road with one leg up in the air and hold it.
Yeah.
I've been there.
Y'all probably don't remember the old Red Holland commercial.
All right, well, thank you very much. Once again, we've had nobody sign up. Is there anybody who would like to speak on this item? Now, y'all making this too easy. I'm afraid this next one might be different. All right, we'll close the public comments. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Item 5 has been tabled. Now we get to the fun. You need a minute to set up? You just let me know when you're ready. Okay, we'll move on to item number 6, Cypress Lake. She's ready to go.
Mr. Chair, this is Cypress Lake PUD. It's a major development order application submitted by Dewberry on behalf of Ashwood Holdings, Florida, LLC. They're requesting approval to subdivide parcel and sell residential lots, as well as the leasing of commercial space on 99 residential lots on 22.36 plus or minus acres with a future land use of neighborhood infill. Mr. Chair, all comments have been addressed except a few comments that we anticipate Public Works will get to us and the applicant's resubmittal, which is in Public Works already, will be satisfactory, their responses. It matches the comprehensive plan in the compatibility analysis. I'd like to point out a few things to you in your packet. You have a letter packet that is anti-project. There are 16 of them. You have a deviation request, which the applicant will be going over, which deviations he will be asking for. You have a packet with 4 project letters, and you have the letter that was sent out to notify the neighborhood and also the mail affidavit. As I said, there are outstanding engineering comments that because of Public Works, the reviewers have been on vacation, so the applicant had resubmitted from the TRC to address all the comments that were on the TRC, and Public Works had a few more comments that they wanted to be addressed. The applicant resubmitted addressing those, and I was expecting a cleared letter today, but I didn't receive it because Public Works was closed today. But we will ask you that if you consider to make a recommendation of approval, we would ask that it be conditional pending satisfactory completion of the comments before it can go to the board. So with that introduced, I will turn it over
Bob,
to,
sorry, would you like to introduce your staff report and these
oh, yes,
five items? And
yes, sir,
documents?
Ma'am. I'd like to enter the staff report into record and also the 5 items, I'm sorry I didn't label them, I realized I should have labeled them instead of just a number, that I went over into the record.
Accepted.
Thank you, and I will turn it over to the agents. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. My name is Dana Matthews, and I'm a lawyer in Walton County, and I'm here representing the applicant.
Dana, were you here when they swore everybody in?
I wasn't, but I'm not
Okay.
testifying.
Yeah.
Okay.
don't
I
know
think
if
all of his
you
witnesses
recall.
were sworn in, right?
I've not
Clay?
been sworn in.
Okay, and this might be a good time to, if we want to see if anybody
Yeah.
else in the
If
audience.
anybody else intends to speak on this item that has not been sworn in,
If you want to
this would be,
stand
please stand up.
and raise your right hand. Okay. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you will provide to this board will be the truth? Yes. Okay. Whenever everyone comes forward to speak, if you would just state and spell your last name and state that you've been sworn in. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioners, I'm proud to represent Ashwood Development. For those of you that don't know them, there's 2 principals, Cole Forsyth, who's here tonight, and that you'll hear from him. His partner is Mike Grimsley. They've been partners for over 30 years. They're no strangers to Walton County. They developed the Cypress Dunes Phase 1 and Phase 2 subdivisions that are southerly adjacent to the 22.5 acres that we're talking about here today. There are approximately 200 single-family lots within those subdivisions. They've developed a couple single-family development projects on Cape San Blas. Done multiple developments in Atlanta over the years, and they've retained and maintained ownership of property here in Walton County, both right near the Cypress Dunes property as well, or Cypress Dunes Phase 1. They vacationed here with their families. They've never been in litigation ever in all these years in real estate. Unlike most of my clients, developer clients, I find that kind of interesting. Never been sued by their associations or their owners. I mean, these are solid developers, and
Well, Dana, what'd they hire you for?
I don't know. I told them it was a black mark. They better be careful what they ask for. They had an opportunity to buy this, the Boys and Girls Club property. It's under contract, due diligence, subject to getting a development order. And for those of you that don't know the history of the Boys and Girls Club property, it's about 22.5 acres, and that's the subject property we're talking about tonight. I've had a long history with that property because I represented the Boys and Girls Club for many, many years, and actually sat through a 3.5-day development order hearing for the Boys and Girls Club project on that property that was granted by the commission. Then my clients were sued by the adjacent property owners. We entered into a settlement, made some money, and went and bought the property, and you know where the Boys and Girls Club is today. Boys and Girls Club subsequently sold that property for a significant amount of money to another developer who actually applied for a development order with the county. And it was called the Boardwalk, and was approved back in April of 2006. This is infill property, 8 units an acre, roughly 179 maximum density. This particular developer got a development order from the county for 159 single-family lots, 39,000 square feet of commercial, and I think it was 5,000 square foot pool and a 3,000 square foot pavilion type amenity for the owners. Developer never built that project, but it was approved by the county and all the permits were issued. The developer ended up in foreclosure with the bank and Boys and Girls Club. I had the opportunity to go negotiate with the bank and reacquire the property for them and to land bank it because realestate.com had ended and who knew what the market would lend in the future, but it was a good piece of property. They subsequently entered into a contract to sell it to the Halcyon Group, and I don't know if it ever got to the Planning Commission. I know that within this past year, the Halcyon Group had submitted a development order app with the county planning staff for 179 single-family lots. But again, I don't think that ever got to y'all, never got approved. At some point, they withdrew their application, they canceled their contract, they went away, and now they've entered into a contract with my clients that if it closes will be a significant revenue stream for the Boys and Girls Club to enhance the services for the children that they provide here in Walton County at their current facility that can be expanded because of the usage and demand that is on that facility today. Now talking about specifically this project, I'm going to give you the highlights, 40,000 feet if you will. I'm going to let Cliff Nauer give you the project details and be able to answer some more technical questions that you might have. Mr. Forsythe's going to, like I said, present to you mainly about the commercial component. Of course, you can ask him anything you want to, and then we'll open it up to the public, and then I'd like to save time for rebuttal, if that's okay. One of these emails that Mr. Bronny was talking about, they didn't exist until yesterday morning, and all of a sudden we started getting copies of them, and thank you very much for sharing them with us. And so based on some of the things that I read, that I thought we might want to address some of those issues right off the bat to the extent that you read them and that maybe questions y'all have. One of the issues was, well, what public benefits, because this is submitted as a major development order, and it's a PUD, and it's for 85 single-family lots, and 40 what they call twin units. It's a high-end duplex type of product. But when you add that together, you've got 135, which is roughly 6.3 units an acre, which is less than 8 max on infill, and it's also compatible with the Cypress Dune subdivisions, phase 1 and 2, and Flamingo across the street. The developer is, of course, very familiar with all those properties. They developed 2 of them, and they wanted to have a product and a size of lots that were consistent with the sizes of the lots and the setbacks that were approved as part of Cypress 1 and 2. They needed some, because Cypress 1 and 2 was also PUD, and they also got reduced side setbacks on the lots. They obviously have to submit it for a PUD, and you have to have a public benefit. And I want to pass out, if I may, what we'll call applicants Exhibit A.
So, Mr. Matthews, you'd like that introduced as an exhibit?
Yes, ma'am. Just for the record, Exhibit A is a letter dated September 6, 2017 from Cliff Nauer at Dewberry, Preble Ridge to the county that was submitted as part of resubmittal on part of the application documents. This is what I call a public benefits letter. I'll give you a minute to look at it.
Do we need to accept this, Sydney?
Yes, sir.
That's accepted.
Mr. Chairman, okay. For the benefit of the public, since they don't have the letter in front of them, I just wanted to hit some of the highlights. The parking at the request, and first of all, I want you to know that before the application was filed, was multiple meetings with the planning staff, not just, before pre-app meeting, for after the formal and after every resubmittal, we would meet again, and because we were interested in their comments, and so this project was designed, if you will, what you have before you today, with a lot of input from, and then not just Bob Bronny, but from Matt Carpenter and Chance Powell and engineering, environmental, all the departments honed in on this. And we were very keen to listen to what they had to say. One of the things was we had parking on the front of the commercial building originally, and they wanted it moved to the back, or most of it to the back, that required another resubmittal. Initially, the commercial building that you see now, it's 2 buildings, and it's kind of hard to tell from these kind of two-dimensional drawings, but it was one big building, and they wanted, and the amphitheater was in the back. County wanted to said, can you look at dividing your building up and creating a vista, if you will, from a view corridor as you drive down 30A. So that building got redesigned. The amphitheater got moved into the middle of the building. So if you're driving down 30A, you see this big archway, and you can see a green amphitheater through there, and parking. Of course, most of the commercial parking then is in the rear of the building. There's a extensive landscaping, and it's a plan, and it's been submitted, and I do not know all the details of it, but I know we went back and forth on landscaping plans a lot. And one of the things that in the public benefit, and it's also one of the variance requests, is to allow us to have a very attractive, very enhanced landscaping plan to be in that area right in front of the building within that corridor there. If you were out there today, you would just see a bunch of scrub. That's the way the property's been forever. The other thing is although not required, the developers agreed to put underground utilities, which includes taking down some light poles. And so the entire project on 30A, as well as into the interior of the project, will be underground. We were interested in talking to the shuttle people and also knowing what the future county's plans are on mass transit, multimodal on 30A. So we've designed a tram stop. We've had conversations with the existing provider. I know that could change in the future with the county, but bottom line is we've created additional paving and turn-off lanes and additional asphalt, and Cliff will explain that to you, to provide a more a traffic calming, if you will, and a tram stop that hopefully will be used not just by the people and the guests that live and visit this project, but by the adjacent projects. As an example, the Cypress Dunes project, their sidewalks stop at their entranceway. We're extending, I think, 725 feet, 5-foot wide sidewalks from their property to our sidewalks in front of our building, because based on the community meetings we had, that we got the impression that the neighbors also were interested in the retail and the restaurant and the offices that would be provided, being able to, the amphitheater, the multi-pass, that pedestrian pass throughout the project, big pond in the back for fishing, and to be able to, that would be something that they would be able to use without having to get in their car and drive to our project. Same way when Cliff shows you the cutouts on the for creating pedestrian stripe measures from across the street for Flamingo. Again, all this was taken into consideration and things that we believe that will enhance the public benefit of this project. The landscaping agreement we've pretty much already talked about. I want to give you, we've quantified it, and these are some fairly good numbers because it's been pricing that's been going on and bids on a number of these projects. So I would like to, if I could, quantify for you some of these public benefit numbers. First of all, prop share. I don't know if you, again, I know you get a lot of stuff on these packages, but basically we're, Joe Poole is the traffic, did the traffic report for the applicant. Y'all know Joe Poole, I'm sure. I mean, he does work for the county and other property owners. He's been involved in evaluating traffic patterns in South Walton for many, many years. He determined that we would have a $95,000 prop share based on that. And the county has reviewed our traffic reports and the impacts, and they've agreed that that would be our prop share number. In addition to the prop share number, which is a check that gets written to the county, we have those improvements that I told you about on 30A that we're making. That's going to cost about $130,000. The underground utilities is approximately $250,000. Tram stop, $50,000. The 725 feet of 5-foot sidewalks, they're not required, about another $30,000. And the enhanced landscaping in the scenic corridor area on 30A is another $100,000. And also the paving that is out front there, we, instead of having asphalt or concrete, we talked with the county and we all kind of agreed that it would probably be better because of all the landscaping is that we'd have pervious pavers. That's about another $25,000 expense, to the tune of about $680,000 if you quantify some of these public benefits I'm
Real
talking
quick,
about.
Bob, do you know where the traffic study is in our packet? I haven't seen it.
We haven't received the formal traffic concurrency letter because the way it works is we don't get that until all the comments have been addressed and zeroed out. So that's why when he speaks that number, I have not gotten, though I don't doubt that that's what Public Works talked with them about, I have not gotten their official response that sets that number.
So we don't know as far as trips added and all that stuff? We have no idea?
Yeah, we have the traffic report, you just don't have it in your packet.
Okay. Can we get a copy of that? I'd like to,
I can give you mine if you.
I'd like to know what it says. I think that's
This is
important.
Exhibit B. I only have one of them.
That's okay.
Yeah, why don't we take a quick break and you can go make some copies real quick? I think that's important to look at, so,
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that too.
yeah. Let's take a 10-minute break, and then when we come back, we'll have that hopefully, and we can continue on. So I think that's important to
Yes, sir.
see
Yes,
as
sir.
we go through. Okay,
always on.
Karen, are you ready to start? Okay, we'll go ahead and open the meeting back up, and Mr. Matthews, you can continue.
Thank you. One thing, I misstated something and I want to correct it. When I was mentioning about the boardwalk at 30A, I think I said 39,000 square feet of commercial that had been improved. It's 38,115. I didn't want to tell you the wrong thing. And they also got 17 condo units on top of that. So it was a total allowable DUs that were approved by the county for this property was 178, plus the commercial that I told you about. And Mr. Nauer will go through more of the details of the traffic report with you and answer any questions. But I will note on page 16 of 16, which is the conclusion, the estimated prop share was $95,000. Obviously, I didn't realize, I thought the county had approved that, but from what Mr. Bronny says, they're still reviewing it. Whatever the prop share is whatever the prop share is. My client's got to pay it. And he also, Mr. Poole had certain recommendations, if you notice there in his conclusion, and all those recommendations have been included in the site plan. And again, Mr. Nauer will be able to address any of those things with you.
Okay.
This project, like I said, was a lot of time was spent with the staff to make sure we could answer their concerns and questions. The staff report, as you know, there's a couple discrepancies. I do need to point that out. On page 1 of the staff report, this is the cover page. Might be easier if I can just show you. Staff has up here 99 residential units and 99 residential lots. That's not accurate. It's, as I mentioned, there's 85 single-family lots, 40 of the twins or the duplexes, and 16 condominium units. And the commercial building or two buildings combined total about 53,000 square feet, and that's a combination of office and retail and restaurant.
Okay.
That's the only thing I saw other than on page 5 of 10, under the project analysis, it's an accurate statement in terms of what the maximum residential density would be under infill. That's not what we've asked for, or my client has, and it is a proper 6.31, but you'd have to fill in the blanks, which are the 85 lots that I told you about in the duplexes, to make that an accurate analysis for you. Those would be my only comments on the staff report.
Okay.
Staff report did determine this project was compatible. Ken Metcalf, who's here tonight, answer any questions if need be. Prepared a very lengthy and detailed compatibility report that was reviewed by the county and accepted, again, taking into consideration following the planning department's directive that you have to follow, in evaluating properties within a quarter of a mile and doing, analysis not just from use, but also size of lots, setbacks, the entire process, and county staff accepted the compatibility report as this project being compatible. Same thing with environmental. There's a very extensive environmental report that was submitted, and the environmental department has signed off on it as well. So the county has determined in their staff report that my client meets the requirements of the Land Development Code and the Comprehensive Plan. Just so you know that besides the meetings with staff, my clients undertook 2 community meetings and mailed notices to within the same thing you would do in a compatibility within 300 feet of a meeting. We actually had a meeting before pre-app and we had a meeting after pre-app that Mr. Forsyth and Mr. Nauer attended that were, as I understand it, very well attended meetings with the neighbors to discuss the project, and some of their input also dictated as this project was evolved into what you see here today. This didn't happen overnight. This has been going on for about 6 months. Also, Mr. Nauer met with the state park folks next door at Topsail. He'll be able to tell you the details of those conversations. One of the things that, and just so you know, Cypress Dune 1 and 2 also has single-family lots that butt up to the state park, and it's my understanding the state park never had any problem with those. Of course, we have some single-family lots that are also with a 10-foot buffer around it. They had requested that the applicant consider, we had 15-foot high street lights throughout the interior lights. That's what was originally designed, thinking that that would be inappropriate. They did not want those, and they asked if the developer would consider removing them, and instead on all our pedestrian pathways that are wound and weave around through the project, if we would just use 4-foot, little low incandescent lighting, and the applicant has agreed to do that. So at this time, I would like to turn this over to Mr. Nauer, if I may, to get into some more of the specific project details. Okay. And like I said, like an opportunity for rebuttal after the public speaks.
No problem.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Cliff Nauer, Knauer. My home address is 110 Gulf Club Drive. My office address is 877 North County Highway 393. So, again, thank you.
Mr. Nauer, you were sworn in.
Yes, ma'am, I was sworn in. So thank you for the opportunity. What I'd like to do, if I could, just quickly, and I know you guys don't want this dragging out, I'd like to walk you through the site plan and just point out a couple of facets of the plan that we think are important and considerations, as Dana said, evolved. This is not the site plan that we started with. We've made a lot of changes since we started. And a lot of the changes that came about were not just from meetings with the planning department, they were from meetings with the community members as well. And so we've kind of tried to listen to what everybody had to say and made changes to try to address issues as they were brought to our attention. So if it's okay, I'm just going to walk through it real quick. I'll go like this so maybe everybody can kind of follow me. So along County Road 38, I'll talk about the traffic report in just a second, but there were some turn lanes that were warranted based on the traffic study that we have included. There were other measures on County Road 38 that were part of the conclusions of the report that I can discuss that were all implemented with our plan. We do have a trolley stop right in the center of the commercial area. We hope that one day on 38 there will be a functional trolley system of some sort to help take care of traffic issues that were have continued to be a problem in County Road 38. Again, we initially had one big building that came all the way across the front that had parking in front of the building. It was suggested that it would be better if we moved the parking to the rear of the building, which we did. And we also split the building up into two separate buildings. so that there's still a view corridor from County Road 30A that was blocked pretty badly from the first plan that we had. We have almost 4,000 feet of trails throughout the project, and we wanted it to be a walkable community. One of the things that is a little different with our plan than you guys see most of the time is that all of our trails are interior trails between the lots. And the idea was that if your kids are going to go play, rather than them playing out in the street or going to a neighbor's house or going to the lake or anywhere else, they would actually be walking between houses and not out in the street. Our trails go all the way around the project, or through the project, and they connect to the sidewalk that is currently at the end of Phase 1 Cypress Dunes. Phase 2 Cypress Dunes. There's a crosswalk that has lights in it that are just to the south of our project. You could conceivably cross at the lighted crosswalk, or you could cross at the crosswalk that we're proposing on 30A in front of our commercial. The overall layout of the lots is almost exactly the same as Phase 1 and Phase 2, and I know a lot about it because I'm also the engineer of record for both of those projects. I designed both of those projects for Mike and Cole, and the size of these lots and the dimensions of these lots are almost the exact same as Cypress Phase 1 and 2. And so these lots all average about 1/10 of an acre. Cypress Phase 2 lots are like 0.097, just under 1/10 of an acre. Cypress Phase 1 has some that are just a little over 1/10 of an acre, but in general, the lot sizes are the same as Phase 2 and Phase 1.
You know how big the lot sizes are at Flamingo across 38?
It's actually listed in the compatibility report.
We didn't get that either, I don't think.
I'll get that for you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's something that, that was included with the compatibility report because they actually compared lot sizes of Flamingo, Phase 1 and Phase 2. All three.
No, sir. Not right now, okay?
And so trails were an important part of the project. During our community meetings, we actually had a trail that joined with Phase 2 Cypress Dunes. The residents of Phase 2 Cypress Dunes told us loud and clear they didn't want a trail connecting to their property, that they had concerns about people that might go from the commercial over to their property. So we took out the trail in between our property and Phase 2, and it was at the request of the adjoining subdivision. They will be able to walk out to the sidewalk and come over to enjoy any of the commercial uses. And so that's kind of just an overview of the project. I'll go into, if I can, submit this as well. Mr. Chairman, it's a copy of the plat from Cypress Phase 2 that also shows the setbacks that were on Cypress Phase 2, which is the adjacent subdivision.
Do we have copies of that?
Yes, sir. I have plenty of copies for
Okay.
everybody if I could.
Mr. Matthews, would you like this to be made an exhibit?
Yes, please.
So this will be applicant's Exhibit C.
I really hadn't planned on passing that out, but after seeing a number of the letters that were submitted in opposition to the project, there seems to be a lot of confusion about what the lot sizes are in some of the adjacent areas. And so I also am passing this out so that you can see what the setbacks are in Cypress Phase 2. They're the exact same as what's in Cypress Phase 1. It's 5-foot setbacks is really what it is. And so they have 5-foot front, 5-foot side, 5-foot rear. And so Cypress Dunes 1 and 2 is also a PUD. And so I wanted to make sure there's no confusion about what the setbacks are next door, about what the lot sizes are next door, and make sure that you guys had something in front of you so that we don't he said, she said about what's actually there.
Okay, that's accepted.
Okay, so just briefly, Dana mentioned underground power. I don't think it was very clear, really. The underground power is on County Road 30A. And so the $250,000 to put power underground is not just in the subdivision, but it's on County Road 30A. And the reason that's an important detail is because that's the only way that we would be able to landscape the right-of-way of 30A the way that we would like to landscape the right-of-way. And so we've asked to enter into a developer's agreement with the county so that we can irrigate, landscape, and maintain that section of right-of-way up to the standards that Cole and Mike would like to keep in front of the project. And so underground power, you can't really landscape with power lines above you because you're limited very strictly to what trees you can possibly grow. Another quick thing I'd like to mention is that the comments that we did not receive back from engineering, we submitted a week ago, and there were very minor comments. We actually addressed them in 15 minutes at my office. It was not major components of this project that there were any questions about.
Can you tell me what they were?
I can give you, I can tell you several of them. Yes, sir. On the stormwater, there was a question about the season high groundwater table. And in the report that we had on the season high groundwater table, there was a table 1 in the front of it. And the elevations of the groundwater table that we showed were the actual apparent groundwater table and not the season high groundwater table. And so Public Works wanted to verify that we had 2 feet of separation between our dry ponds and the season high groundwater table, which we do. And we revised the table to show them that we had the 2 feet of clearance that they required. And so one of their issues was verifying that our stormwater provided drawdown within 72 hours, which it does much, much sooner than that. And so we've designed the entire project for 100-year pre-post. And so we didn't design by 25-year, we designed by 100-year. It's also in a closed basin. And so that's one of the requirements that the county has, and that's one of the items that we did. We could have designed the front half of the project for 25-year. It is not in a closed basin. We chose to instead design the entire project by 100-year criteria. I can go into more comments that they had if you would like, but they were all very minor. There were more clarifications than they were design issues. So just to kind of walk you through, the setbacks that we're proposing on the residential are the same as Phase 2 and Phase 1 of Cypress Dunes next door. There's no difference. The commercial setbacks, it's required by code to have a 25-foot front, 10-foot side, and 20-foot rear. We have proposed a 20-foot front setback. We have over 100 feet of side setbacks and 150 feet of rear setback. And so one of the items that we were asking essentially for a variance on through our PUD is for 5 feet on the front setback. We are going to maintain no more than 50 feet of height. We're not asking to go above that. We will be 4 stories. As Dana mentioned, we have 85 single-family, 40 townhouse units, and 16 condominiums for a total of 141. On the commercial,
Hey, Cliff.
Yes, sir.
Townhomes.
I'm sorry, twin units. My apologies. My apologies. They actually look like two. They look like one house, but it's actually 2 residences that looks exactly like one big house. And so that gives you an idea. On the commercial space, Cole's going to go into it just a little bit further. But essentially we have 53,000 square feet total, and I'm going to let him tell you the allocation of those square feet.
Let me ask you real quick, Cliff, just crossed my mind. On the residential portions, the single family, the whatever you call them in the condos,
Yes.
will there be any type of restrictions as far as rentals, short-term rentals, long-term rentals?
None that I'm aware of. We really don't expect this to be a big rental community so much. I think Cypress Phase 1 and Phase 2 probably have a few rentals in them. Maybe some of the folks here can speak to that better than I can, but we don't really expect this to be a rental community. That's not what we're anticipating. And so the layout was commercial, which is your most intense use.
It just seems like just about everything down there at some point turns into
Yep.
to rentals.
Well, this is a long
Short-term rentals.
Yes, sir. It's a pretty good ways to the beach. It's about close to a mile to the beach from where this location is.
That's why they golf carts on 38, right?
Yeah, there you go. There you go. But at this time, they haven't restricted anything.
Right, I understand that.
That I'm aware of.
Okay.
We exceed the number of spaces, parking spaces required for our commercial. For all of our commercial, 306 are required, and we're providing 326. So we have about 20 spaces more than what's required by code. We also have more bike parking slots than what's required by code. We also have more handicap spaces than what's required by code. As they mentioned earlier, our density is 6.31 units per acre. The maximum for this land use is 8, and we did a pretty exhaustive compatibility study to demonstrate that it matches the densities in the adjoining neighborhoods. We have public recreational use includes the amphitheater, the walkways, and the pedestrian facilities. We have a total of about 16% of our site dedicated to those things. As Dana mentioned earlier, I had some community meetings, 2 community meetings at the library. The first one was very well attended, somewhere 55 to 60 people. It was a good meeting, and we got lots of good input that we have reflected on our current site plan. We had our second one after we applied for a development order at the same location, and it wasn't as well attended, but we also got some good feedback at that we have incorporated into what we have here today. My meeting with DEP, as he mentioned, we eliminated the lighting on the streets. We will now just be lighting the pedestrian trails with 4-foot pedestal lights. And the DEP folks also asked about a fence around the perimeter of the site bordering topsail, and the owner of the project, Cole and Mike, are agreeable with whatever the DEP would like to put up, whatever fence, whatever they would like to put up around the perimeter. They're agreeable to whatever they want. I'd like to maybe just skip into the traffic study if I could.
That'd be good.
And get that out of the way.
If you could, Cliff, try to, there's a lot of pages here. And
Yes, sir.
obviously we ain't had time to read
I've got it broke down to 3 pages for you.
You're the man.
Yes, sir.
Can I ask a question first?
Yes, sir.
Did you say there's no street lights in this project now?
There's no street light in the
Residential.
Yeah, so from here all the way around to there's no street lights of any sort. There may be some lighting around the commercial, but there's no street lights anywhere here, which is what we originally had street lighting all the way around. And so we've taken all that out.
Because DEP asked you to.
That's where you've gone to the 4-foot pedestal lights?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The park manager, Ms. Mebany, asked us if there was a way that we could eliminate that. They're trying to get I think it's called a dark sky designation for topsail that they're trying to get right now, and they said it would be helpful to them if that was gone. And so we're good with it. So does that answer your question? So I've got it broke down to 3 pages on the traffic study. Page 1 is straight out of the ITE manual, which is the trip generation chart. And so on the trip generation chart, that's the table right there, you can see there's a total of 215 trips generated by this entire project. This is PM peak hour trips, 215. There's 115 entering and 100 exiting, okay?
You have to help me understand that, Cliff.
Yes, sir.
Because if you're gonna have 50,000 square foot of commercial, you're gonna have restaurants.
Yes, sir.
What other type of businesses do you expect to have in there?
So there's retail, there's restaurant, and there's office space.
How big will the restaurant be?
The total for the restaurant is 17,000 square feet.
How many people will that seat?
Cliff, hold on, Cliff, that's the total amount of the different spaces, not one
Right.
restaurant.
Yeah, it's more than one space, but if you take all the commercial, the amount of restaurant space for all the commercial is 17,000.
About how many people would that seat to feed at one time?
Well, we don't have plans done on the,
There's gotta be some kind of figure generally used for restaurant space, right?
There's some figures used based on square feet for the number of trips generated. And based on the ITE code for restaurants, they come up with, for just the restaurants, there's 76 trips total for the restaurants is what they have based on the ITE code, which is what all traffic engineers and so forth rely on. The specialty retail, you can see above it, is 40, and then general office is 31.
So restaurants, total
This is just PM peak hour trips.
PM peak hour trips at 84. Is that correct?
For restaurants.
For the restaurants?
I believe it's 76.
Listed here is 84.
It says 84.
On page 1.
Okay. I apologize. 84. Mine says 76 for some reason. I don't know why.
Why is there such a discrepancy in the enter and exit trips?
Yes, sir. There's something called internal capture. And so as cars come to that development, they do other things as well. Some of those people may live at the facility, for example. Some of the people may also be going to the retail. Some of them may be going to other types of uses within the facility. It's called internal capture. And I can show you on page 7 the distribution, which shows you what trips are going where. I apologize, it's page 9. Page 9, I'm sorry.
But your total peak hour trips is 222 for everything?
Yes, sir, it is. If you look on page 9, you can see the development is on the left-hand side in that table, in the chart right there. Mm-hmm. The section south of 30A has 76 PM peak hour trips headed north and 64 headed south. And on the north side of our development, it would be 65 trips headed north and 81 trips headed south. And that's the trip distribution that Joe Poole provided for the project based on his traffic analysis.
That just don't seem right, but he's
Yes,
the
sir.
expert, I guess, right?
Yes, sir. He's
And I guess the problem that I have with it, Cliff, is just based on 30A and
Yep.
looking at what's there today.
Yep.
And how busy some of those places are, especially anything that's even comparable to this.
Yep.
And you throw in July traffic,
Right.
I can't, I have a hard time understanding how it's going to be possible to clear Highway 98 traffic
Yeah.
at Highway 38.
Right.
Because this is not very far from Highway 98.
That's right.
And that's an awful lot of traffic that's going to be slowing down, turning, and I understand you'll have turn lanes, but there's turn lanes all over the place that ain't capable of holding traffic to come down.
Right.
And that's why, I mean, just looking at what's there today and how things actually are on 30A, this seems like a very low number to me.
Right. Well, we're, again, we're providing.
That's just Teddy, though.
Yeah, I understand.
Well, there's two other, didn't I see that the turn lanes are 50 feet?
The taper on the turn lanes are 50 feet, yes.
So how many cars will those turn lanes hold?
The length of the turn lanes is actually longer than that. The taper is 50 feet, and I think the length of them, I want to say, is around 100 and, I'd have to look at those to tell you.
Go look.
100, say it's 120, that's 11 cars.
Yeah. The total length of the turn lane is 125, is the total length of it. We have plenty of room to make those longer. One of the things that we did as part of the project is instead of just having a turn lane and a transition off of 30A and then going back to the normal section and then having another transition later, we're actually overlaying all of 30A for the project. And so if we needed to extend the left turn lanes, it's a matter of striping only. And so we have, if you look on the plan, the center gore area between the turn lanes, I could probably make my turn lane probably 250, 300 feet easily with the improvements that we're already doing.
How much, is 38 gonna be wider than it is today?
Just adding turn lanes. So we're doing center widening. We'll be widening both sides of 30A to accommodate the turn lanes.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll be overlaying the entire thing from before our project till after our project, so that there's not a bunch of patched up turn lanes on 30A. So,
Right.
Now, the other thing is, there's a school
Yes,
that's got
sir.
about 1,000, 1,100 students
yep,
within striking distance of this.
yep, very familiar.
And that's a zoo anyways.
Yep. Yep,
So
and,
you're making, I mean, it's gonna be a bigger zoo.
well, we're hoping that some of the kids that live here might walk to school. But I'm very familiar with the school.
I know you're familiar with the whole area, and it's just, I mean, I'm not convinced that traffic is gonna handle that.
Yeah, well, everything was done
Yeah, I
by
understand.
the IT manual. I think if you look at some of these other restaurants that do have troubles, that you see having troubles all the time, I don't think most of those even meet the minimum requirements. I mean, if you look at Elmo's and some of the other restaurants that they park all over the place because there's not enough spaces, if you were to have those restaurants at least meet the minimum number of spaces required by the code, I think you'd see a different situation. And so we have more than what's required by the code.
Well, we unfortunately don't have the power to do that.
I understand. No, I understand completely.
That was a mistake that was made in the past. but
Yes, sir.
We don't wanna make mistakes
That's
going
right.
forward. I mean, we can't fix the past, but we can fix the future.
Right. Well, we want to do it right. We don't want to cut the number of spaces. We're not asking for any variances for that. We're providing, I think, 20 spaces more than what's required now. We have a total of 326 spaces, 4 designated just for commercial. So we're not looking for any shortcuts or variances or anything of that sort.
Okay.
Going to parking, or, I mean, I like the commercial parking, and I commend you for that. But where are we gonna park all these people that live there? I mean, is there anything written into the covenants?
Yes, sir.
about parking?
There is.
Could you explain that?
So we have a couple of different options for parking that are going to be part of the development order. And so if, for example, you have a 3-bedroom house that you're building on the lot, you'll be required to have 2 parking spaces. If you have any more than that, you'll be required to have the appropriate number of spaces for those number of bedrooms. And so we've addressed it on the site plan so that you cannot build a 4-bedroom house and not provide adequate parking. And so that'll be part of the development order. It'll be part of the restrictions on all these lots.
What's the largest house that will be built in there?
Probably the largest house that you could probably reasonably fit on one of these lots is probably in the neighborhood of 3,000 square feet, something in that neighborhood. So that was one of the things that we included with all of our development order documents to keep a situation where there's room to put 2 cars in, but they get a development order for 4 bedrooms or 5 bedrooms. And so,
6 or 7 or 8.
yeah, and there's no way that they would be able to get out of providing adequate parking based on this part of the development order.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, back to the retail, what are gonna be the hours of these stores?
Yeah, we,
You got school taking in, what, 8:30?
I think, I think a little bit before that.
What time will your restaurants open?
Yeah, I don't think they've set any hours for any of the restaurants or commercial or any of that stuff
And
yet.
I just said if they could stagger that,
Stagger it from the morning traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
You got the afternoon, it's just.
you afternoon, maybe a different story.
Yeah, that's one of the crazy things about Walton County is nobody rides a bus. My kids go to Bay Elementary and ECMS, and every kid gets dropped off somehow. The buses are empty, and everybody's in a car. So I don't know what you can do to try to address that challenge, but
Apparently millennials don't like buses.
I guess not.
So my daughter influenced me.
Yeah. It's torture to be on a bus, I guess. So, do you have any more traffic-related questions? I know that we've provided more than what's required by the code, and
I'm sure we'll have some that come up.
yes, sir. Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure.
Just take notes.
Yes. I'll be wishing Joe Poole was here, I'm sure. But we feel like we have it covered pretty well. We went through a lot of trouble to make sure that we didn't short ourselves on parking, that we had adequate parking, and we followed the letter of the law in the code.
Okay.
The last thing that I wanted to go through just briefly is the variances that we're requesting on the project as part of the PUD, and that'll be the last thing that I have.
You can go through all of them?
I'm going to.
Okay.
Discussed it with Bob, and Bob suggested that I do go through them all.
Yeah.
If you guys don't want me to, I won't.
No, I was going to request you do that.
Yes, sir. I've got them right here ready to go. So, item 1 is required setbacks. We're requesting 5-foot front, rear, and side setbacks, which matches Cypress Phase 1 and 2. We're also, so normal is 20-foot front, 15 rear, 7.5 sides. We're asking for 5 on all 3. Commercial building setbacks, land development code requires 25-foot front, 20-foot rear, and 15-foot sides. We're requesting that our front commercial setback be 20 feet rather than 25. Scenic corridor, the land development code requires a 20-foot scenic corridor buffer. We're requesting to provide landscape within the right-of-way through a development agreement with Walton County to enhance the visual characteristics of the buffer. A big part of that was putting power underground that could not be enhanced without the underground power, and so that's a important part of the project for us as well.
Cliff, one question on that one real quick.
Yes, sir.
So what you're talking about then is your front setback would be basically the right-of-way?
No, sir.
No?
No. It's 20 feet off the right-of-way. And so there's normally 25-foot front setback required.
Uh-huh.
We're asking for a 5-foot variance on the front setback.
Okay.
Yes, sir. It's 5 feet.
Okay.
Well, then what's the whole deal about the right of way?
Do we put landscaping in?
Put landscaping.
Yes, sir. We want to have a developer's agreement with the county to put landscaping within the county right-of-way to enhance basically the whole area between the shoulder and the property line is what we're asking to do. Yes, sir. Access points, the land development code allows 3 access points for a continuous frontage of 600 feet or more. We're requesting 4 instead of 3. It has been reviewed by engineering for the reason that we've asked for 4. It's for safety and circulation. One of the items that we're trying to do is we're trying to allow the residential portion of the development to have a separate access than the commercial, so that we don't have the residential and the commercial trying to go in the same entrance. We think that it'll be much safer that way, and we think it'll be a much better project because of it. The smallest driveway separation that we have is 260 feet, which is a pretty significant distance between drives. So it's not like we're stacking one driveway after another. So there's a significant separation between our drives. We're providing the turn lanes, the pedestrian walkways, the trolley stop, and multi-use connections to the existing multi-use path. The loading zones, they require 250 square feet of loading zone for every 25,000 gross feet of floor area. We are providing loading zones on the project in 2 different areas. I can show you where those are if you care to see them.
Yeah, I would like to see where they are. I thought I read something where they were going to actually block a drive lane.
No, sir. This is our delivery truck, and this is our auto turn analysis that we ran to run the delivery trucks through the entire project. And the loading zone are going to be behind the commercial on these two corners, will be our specified loading zones.
Is that going to block access to that parking while they're loading and unloading?
Well, we actually have the loading zone set up for the corners on both sides. And so
So there's enough room for cars to get by when trucks are
Yes, sir.
sitting there?
there would be, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So how big are the loading zones actually?
We have 50 feet designated for each side.
So that's a 200-foot variance per building.
I think we're asking for a variance in the length of the loading zone, but we're still providing loading zones for the project.
But it says here it's 250 square foot for every 25 square foot. Y'all got 50,000 square feet. That should be 500 feet of loading dock. So you're requesting.
They don't have that much commercial. I don't think they have that much commercial.
Well, I'm just saying, that's what it says the LEC says. So that's a pretty substantial deviance, if I'm adding right now.
It's 250 square feet per 25,000 square feet,
Right.
and we have 50,000 square feet, and so we're providing 100.
So there should be 500 square feet of loading zone.
So we're providing 1,000 square feet of loading zone.
So that's not really a deviation then? Or an upgrade instead of a reduction?
Yes, sir. If the building was 50,000 square feet, you'd be required to have 500 square feet of loading zone, and ours is 53,000 square feet. And so we actually really are not actually asking for a variance on that, really. I think that we're actually providing more than what's required. One of the other issues that we wanted to point out was that we can also control delivery times and would have our deliveries before these businesses open rather than trying to have deliveries while the businesses are open. And so we can have them unload at night, we can have them unload early AM before all the people are there as well. Secondary wetland buffer. The Land Development Code limits the impacts of secondary wetland buffers for boardwalks, public access, or landward portions of docks. It also states that within this zone, the clearing of native vegetation shall be limited to 25% of the total area within the zone on that site. Our request is to disturb less than 1% of the buffer for maintenance access, and I'll show you in a second exactly where that's at. The disturbance area that we're asking for a variance on is allowed by Water Management District and DEP. There's department directives that clarify allowable disturbances, and the existing vegetation proposed to be preserved and enhance the buffer. Let me show you just real quick. So this is the southwest corner of the site. Topsail is over here. This is Cypress phase 2 down here. The issue is that it allows for a boardwalk to go through the secondary buffer. It's not in wetlands. And what we're proposing to do is bury a pipe underground for access to this stormwater facility. And so the language allows for structures like boardwalks, timber boardwalks, to be placed in that secondary buffer. But the language that's in the code doesn't say anything about a buried pipe. And so there's some confusion about whether a buried pipe, it wasn't specifically named, but we think that's a lot less impact than a timber boardwalk would be. And so that's the reason for our request, is because the code doesn't specifically say a buried pipe. And so this would all be vegetation. We also are increasing the buffer area on both sides of it to much more than the 25 feet required. So this would all be buffered, and that would all be buffered. And there's no wetland impacts on this project whatsoever. None. The last item is the roadway widths. The Land Development Code requires a 24-foot drive aisle width. We are providing a 21-foot drive aisle width. We've also ran auto turn through the entire project, and we have submitted that to Mr. Sanchez for review. And they have indicated that they don't see any issues. And so, I don't know if he's here tonight, but so we think that even though we're 3 feet less than the required width of the drive aisle, the auto turn works with all the fire trucks that we have here in Walton County. And that's the end of the variances.
Now, let me ask you, will street parking be prohibited in the residential areas by, how's that?
On-street parking will be prohibited. Off-street parking will not. And so
Right.
on the plan that I showed you earlier, there's a provision to
So
do
you
off-street.
can't park in front of your house?
No, sir, not in the street.
Okay.
Not in the street.
How would that be enforced? Just curious.
Well, I mean,
I can address that. I'm going to be involved.
You gonna be
with-
driving around, Dana?
Yeah, I know one thing that I've dealt with associations, and once you put the restrictions that we're going to be putting in these documents, they're going to be enforceable by the developer, and once it's turned over to the association as required by law, association board, and I can assure you that they're not going to allow, I say that, anything could happen, but I would be very surprised with a high-quality product that's going to be built in this subdivision that they would allow people to violate their covenants. But that's all we can do,
Right.
is provide it, and we can also require it in the development order, and that's a condition of the development order, and we can put all that in our CCRs.
Okay.
so that's all I had, Mr. Chairman. I was going to let Mr. Cole Forsyth just walk you through the building, if that's okay.
Yeah, we're gonna take about a 10-minute break, and we'll come back and
Yes, sir.
start.
Is that dinner?
Sydney, how you doing? Hanging in there?
All right. Yeah, no kidding.
Almost done, we
Have you had that here the whole time, or they just bring it into you? Somebody leave?
No, it's always been here.
Oh, yeah. I thought you just usually pull your gun out and fire it off around and get everybody's attention.
That thing really works, don't it?
Got my attention.
Mr. Chairman, if I may continue?
You may.
Just one thing I was told at the break, staff told me that I actually did not need a variance for the pipe in the buffer, that actually is allowed, so strike that from
Okay.
something that I'm requesting. I was not aware of that until a few minutes ago.
Very good.
Thank you. And this is Mr. Cole Forsyth. I've been doing work for him for about 16 years, all over the place.
All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Forsyth, you were sworn in, right?
Yes, sir. Last name is Forsyth, Forsyth, and my address is 591 West Paces Ferry Road, Atlanta, Georgia, 30305. Before I start, I do want you to know that I heard you on your concerns about the traffic patterns in the school and how it may relate to our businesses. Just sitting there for a few minutes, I do not have a solution, but I will study it and see if there is something. Every suggestion that has been made to us in our multiple meetings that we've had, we've tried to address it and tried to incorporate the suggestions. So I will do that. Originally, when we designed this development, the idea was to develop a project that would be a place for everybody in that local community to be able to come and enjoy, not just for picking up goods and services that they need, but to come and stay and hang around. We're trying to have a place that would be family-oriented, something for everybody. And while we do not have any leases signed yet, because I can't go out and market when I don't have permission and I don't know, but the concept is we want to have a place where you would come with your family, or you could come by yourself, but it is a place, if you did come with your family, there would be possibly pizza, a coffee shop, ice cream, boutiques, places for everybody, and at the same time, a green space. We were calling it an amphitheater earlier. It's not really an amphitheater. It started as that when we had just one building, but now, technically, it's just green space between the two buildings. It's a park. And it's a place where kids can go out and throw a ball or play or run around, or we could just go sit in while whomever is shopping. So that's the idea behind the whole thing. And as we met with neighbors in small group meetings and in the larger group meetings, there were suggestions made, and we've tried to incorporate those in this plan. Now, I'll show you the building that we've designed. This is the front of the building. This is the first building, and this is the second building, and this in between it is where the green space is. And what you see behind it in the rear is a platform that connects the two buildings. And on this platform,
Come over this way, so they might be able to see it out there as well.
is this better?
Well, yeah.
And on this platform is the swimming pool for the community. Now, the idea on that was, I'm starting here just to address why we have this. The reason we're doing it is to create more green space below. If we raise it up and put it up in there, there's more area down below that we can have for not just green space, but for just standing around. So this would be a top floor pool area. But the first floor is retail here. You can see the glass retail slash retail restaurant. And we have estimated that half of this space would be for restaurant. We estimated that half of it would be for retail. We did that estimate just so that we would have more than enough parking. We do not, of course it's not, we don't have the parking to do more than that, but I think it's possible we could do less. And then we would have even more parking that's needed. So that was an estimate. And then the second floor is all office space. And the idea there is live, work, and play. You can work there if you want to. You can go there and you can come here and play. And then on the third floor are the condominiums. And then on the top floor each building will have 2 condominiums, and it will have space for restaurant space if there is demand for restaurant space up high. We think it's possible, but we won't know until we do it. But we do have the parking for it, and we have incorporated it in all our plans. So you may have an office here, and you might want to go up to our rooftop restaurant and have a sandwich, and somebody else might have a sandwich by the pool, is the idea. So this is the way it would look from the front. This is more of the rear look, just so you can see how we're going to present the pool, how we're going to have arches here that will lead into the green space, and then the pool and its deck here, and then the buildings basically.
Okay.
This is a side elevation, which shows the various floors that we discussed. We're incorporating the archway here. This is where the stairwell and the elevator banks would be for each building. So I would like to just reserve the rest of the time for your questions. That's just I know you have many specifics, but that is in general what we're doing.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions? I think it looks great. I think the project looks great. And I don't think that the traffic problem is necessarily anything that you can do anything about. I mean, that's just, to be honest with you. But it's a problem on 38. And I think that's where the concern comes from. All right, thank you. Okay, we didn't have nobody sign up to speak. Just kidding. Okay. We'll start with those who did sign up. Emery, what's that?
Guthrie?
Guthrie?
Golf?
Galtney,
Galton?
Goffney, okay.
Emery Galtney, Gaultney. And I did swear before God, so. I live at 187 Cypress Drive, and I have attended both sessions that Ashwood has conducted for the community, and they answered our questions. You know that something's going to go there eventually, so it might as well be something that's nice. And everything that I've seen and their reputation is to the effect they're going to build a very nice facility and do good construction. So personally, it being part of the Cypress Dunes community, I sign up for this and endorse it.
Thank you. Tim Depp?
What it looks like to me.
Yep.
Tim? Any Tims here that signed up to speak?
Yes.
What's your last name?
Depp, D-E-P.
There you the man.
I just echo what Al said. I mean, I live in Cypress Dunes, and I enjoy it.
Okay.
Seems to be portable.
Bill Parks.
Bill Parks, P-A-R-K-S.
Come on up to the podium if you would, please.
Bill Parks, P-A-R-K-S. I live at 211 White Heron Drive at the Flamingo Village, also now known as Emerald Walk on 30A. I'm familiar with Ashwood because I originally am from Atlanta. I know that they have a reputation of being a first-class developer. I'm on our homeowners board of directors. They came to us in the spring with their plans, reached out to us for our opinions, and our board of directors, in our subdivision, we have 100 houses across the street from this proposed development. We enthusiastically support it and recommend it. We think it would be a big plus for our entire community, and we know from their reputation and what they've done in Cypress Dunes that it would be a first-class facility for the community. So we enthusiastically endorse it.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
And it relates to traffic, because 30A is a unique street.
It is a unique street.
And how do you see, I guess, living there, how do you see traffic in the summertime coming from Highway 98 going?
I've had my house in there for 15 years.
Right.
I retired and moved here full-time 4.5 years ago. I don't see the traffic on 30A, even with the school, even during the summertime, until you get down in the Stinkies area.
Right.
When you get to that bend, and particularly at Stinkies where they have to have valet parking, that's where everybody starts parking on the street. But I have no trouble going in and out because of the school situation or that on that end of 30A.
Do you think a development of this size with that type of retail and restaurant space would change that?
No, sir. I think that's very small retail space.
Okay.
And versus what D.R. Horton had proposed a couple of years ago to come in and build 190 cheap townhouses with nothing that would benefit the community. I think this, again, would be a first-class project by a first-class developer. And I think it would be utilized and appreciated. I would love to have my grandkids come visit and walk across the street and get an ice cream cone and play Frisbee with them.
So you think, I mean, I'm just trying to get some questions answered for my own benefit because I can, I guess, but
I'm there.
I guess a lot of the support for this, I guess, then would be it's much better than what could be there.
Absolutely. We haven't seen anything in the past, and like I say, I've been there 15 years, that's ever been talked about or proposed that would benefit the entire community.
Okay.
And I don't see the traffic being a problem on that end, and I'm in and out of there every day.
Well, I'll say this, I mean, just based on the crowd here, there's obviously not as much concern about this project as there is about a lot of others on the other end of 38.
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, I understand that, but I think that the county has some challenges in that area, and they need to start taking those challenges very seriously.
Well, I think
before the west end of 38 turns into the east
right.
end of 38.
I think we do have it. I think they're looking forward with this, even with the trolley parking that
Right.
would be for future use. And again, I think that's something that would benefit all of the citizens in that area.
Okay, well, I appreciate your input. I
Yes,
thank you
sir.
very
Thank
much.
you.
Celeste Cabina?
Celeste Cabina, C-O-B-E-N-A, and I live at 412 Hilltop Drive. And I live about a mile from this project. I first heard about it yesterday. I saw somebody posted it on Facebook, and I went, this is a ridiculously dense project, and I can tell you it will cause an enormous amount of traffic, because if you live in Flamingo Village and you want to go to 98, you don't have to go through the school traffic. I don't leave my house at 8 in the morning if I'm going towards 98, because there's generally 1-2 sheriffs out there directing traffic. And you're right, every kid gets picked up. So then again at 2:30, it's very congested. And yes, I live on Hilltop. If I drive down the end of Hilltop, there's Stinkies. Yes, there's traffic there. There's parking all over the place there. The county's trying to alleviate some of that with some parking on the side of the road. But, I see this dense of a project. I'm not an expert on density and that sort of thing, but I've lived here since 1990. I've seen a lot of projects go in that I think if you could go back and make a different decision, you would, because they claim to be very well planned, but they're not. Case in point is Seaside. Where did the employees park? The county bought a parking lot for Seaside's employees. So where are you going to buy the parking lot for these employees? There's not going to be enough infrastructure. And just like, Seaside said, people are going, there was that, I worked there when I first moved here, and they were touting that was a live workplace. No one, or very few people, everyone drives in from somewhere else. And
people who work there can't afford to live there. So.
Exactly. When I worked there, people asked me if I lived there. I just laughed, But, there's a lot of issues here, and one of them, and again, I just heard about this, and I'm trying to understand this as I see it, and it's presented tonight. And my understanding is that a PUD is supposed to have public benefits. What I heard as benefits seemed to me to be nothing but benefits for the developer, not benefits for the public, maybe the public within their development. And another issue...
Let me ask you a question on that real quick. You don't think that restaurants, retail, those types of things are a public benefit? Only if you live there?
Well, I think it's a public benefit. No, I don't think it's a public benefit. It's a benefit to the people who own the business. Okay. But to me, a public benefit is open spaces, parks, something that is generally public. A business is a private-owned entity, and so it benefits the guy who owns it.
Okay.
The guy's he's going to sell the property. It benefits him, and also they're going to landscape the right-of-way. How is that a benefit? And I can tell you what, I've talked a lot with the folks who, with the TDC, Brian, about the bike path. And one of the biggest issues, down there in Seagrove, they need to improve the bike path. They need a second bike path. But people have landscaped the county's right-of-way. And there should not be any land. And then they go, well, you're going to tear up my landscaping. And that gets into a whole political thing. Nobody wants that, So I think that's certainly something that should be completely eliminated, and it's not a benefit to the public, the county. It's a detriment, because then certainly if this goes in, at some point, the Seaside Institute's talking about we need a third lane for the autonomous vehicles. Well, then they've taken the right of way, and so you're limiting
Well, I was
that.
suspecting that right of way agreement. If the county needs it, they can get it back.
Right, but part of their benefit for having a PUD, that's my understanding, was that they were going to landscape it. And so then you're destroying what they were supposed to be giving.
Okay, let me ask you this. What do you want them to do with it? Just leave it bare?
Well, I would like the density here to be decreased, because I think if the density is decreased, you're going to decrease the traffic problem. There's going to be a traffic problem here anyway, but I think this is going to be, just like someone up here said, and I thought about it yesterday, I guarantee that traffic will be backed up onto 98 from this project, because not only do you have the school, on the other side of this project, towards 98, you have the entrance to Topsail Preserve. And I've seen sometimes, especially, check-in day, you've got, they've got a long line for people to get in, but you've got, 40-foot RVs lining up to get into Topsail.
Well, that's not the problem for this project.
Right, but I'm saying they are adding an inordinate amount of traffic into this area.
Okay. And
I can see, and here's the thing, and my understanding is, so they're going to write a check to the county for $90,000 or $135,000 in order to increase the traffic. You can kind of pay to increase your traffic because they're not meeting the requirements. But, if you look at what's happening down there in Seagrove, the county is paying millions of dollars to try and improve a traffic situation that was created by overdevelopment. And if some of y'all might be commissioners one day, you're going to be looking at this problem and having to solve it when it could have been avoided in the first place by not putting in such a dense development.
Okay, Ms. Cabine, I would ask you to wrap it up. We got people who want to speak.
Okay. I think that pretty much covers it, but I would ask you to, it's not like these people own the property and it's their property rights. They don't have any property rights here because they don't own the property. So I think they need to go back to the drawing board.
If they buy the property, they will have property rights.
Okay, but they haven't yet. So at this point, they need to.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Bill Muldowney.
Bill Muldowney, Muldowny. I live at 47 Austinwood Lane, Santa Rosa Beach, Florida.
Are you sworn in?
32459.
Were you sworn in?
And I was sworn in.
Okay.
I swear I was sworn in.
All right.
All I can say about Celeste is bless her heart. I was the first homeowner in that area. There was nothing in there on 47 Austinwood Lane except my house 20 years ago. More than 20 years ago. I had the deer, the coyotes, the owls. Cypress Dunes came in and they built on both sides of me. And Celeste and I stood here. She may not remember. We were talking about it earlier, and I remember. And we talked about, should they be that dense by the park, yada, yada, yada. I remember everything, every conversation I ever had in my life. It's a curse as well as benefit sometimes. But what happened is Cypress Dunes, developed by Ashwood Development, turned out to be the most wonderful thing that could have happened around me. And people said to me, geez, Bill, you were sitting there all by yourself with all the animals on a big lot and wooded lot, and it was gorgeous. No Flamingo Village, no Emerald Walk, nothing. And I said, well, it's progress. In this world we have progress. People like to move to the beach. Things are going to be developed. And the way I see it right now is we are so lucky that Ashwood Development is developing that property, because I have seen horrendous things considered for that property since I've lived here, and I fought those. As a matter of fact, people in your positions approved 70-foot ball field lights, 4 or 5 ball fields. None of you guys were on the board at the time, or gals. They approved 70-foot lights that would have lit up this room. You wouldn't have to have a lighting bill here. And all the way to Destin, and all the way to Panama City, there would have been lights. And I stood right here in front of the commission at that time and said, are you kidding me? Have you ever looked? Florida is flat. Have you ever gone to Destin at night when the lights are on? Everybody in the neighborhood fought it, but yet it was approved. And now we're talking about 4-foot lights. It's fantastic. These guys do a great job. Every interaction I've had with them since they came into our neighborhood has been wonderful. I'm not Cole's father. I'm not related to him. I don't have any stock in the company, but I'm just telling you, the county is lucky, we're lucky that they're going to do that development, and I've been watched the plans since the beginning. They're fabulous.
Thank you.
And I
very
sure
much.
hope it goes in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. All right, let's not get carried away yet. Lisa Bushi. I think I got that right.
Well, it's close.
Okay.
Lisa Bouchy, B-O-U-S-H-Y, and I've been sworn in. I've gotten the answers to a lot of the questions I had tonight, so these are just the basic concerns that I have remaining at this point. Unlike many here, I do believe that these will likely become beach rental properties, not necessarily the majority. I mean, I can't predict that sort of thing, but I do know that people don't hesitate to ride their bicycles from a fair distance. We are getting more and more golf carts that come. We actually have a lot of residents of Cypress Dunes that come to a beach actually in my neighborhood. And while we're not opposed to that, I just think people need to recognize that to say that just because something happens to be a mile up the road that it's not going to generate beach rentals, I believe is very naive. So that said, I'll stop at that one. I am concerned somewhat because this end of 30A, as those of you who know it already, is very much single-family residential. While I won't say there are no townhomes or condos, because we do have one little boutique hotel with condo, townhouse kind of things, but it's extraordinarily quiet. There's not a lot of light. There's not a lot of noise. As a matter of fact, virtually no noise. The few businesses that we have on that end of 30A do not have very late hours. They're pretty contained. Most of them are services versus really public, like a restaurant or things like that might be noisier. I had an opportunity to ask about the amphitheater because that did concern me, and I was told what you heard, that that was a name that had kind of stuck, but it's more meant to be a green space for children or people to relax while they eat their ice cream or whatever. So as long as light and noise are not a concern to Emerald Walk, I don't know that I have a great deal to complain about because I don't live across the street. The other thing, let's see, I guess that's probably pretty much it other than the traffic. And I do believe that we do have issues with traffic in the summer. This time of year, no, not at all. But the more we have that feeds into that area, the more we're going to have problems. As you all know in here, the St. Joe area that's right there at the 30 on 38 or just north of 30A across 98. I mean, that's going to generate, I'm sure, a lot of traffic. And there'll be a lot more people going north to that area and maybe people coming south to this. Depending on how they do these retail and the restaurant and all, it may turn out to be a destination as opposed to just a little local, gosh, let's run to Elmo's, which is kind of what Elmo's does. But those are my main concerns. Obviously, when they know more about, for instance, restaurants, what kind of hours they might keep, whether they are open for breakfast, lunch, supper, how many seats they have. I mean, those things can all add up. It sounds like they're tending more toward the Starbucks, little lunch places, things like that. Rather, at first I thought they meant a 17,000-foot restaurant. That's a big restaurant and holds a lot of people. But I think those were my main concerns. And I appreciate the thoughtfulness I see in the questions you all have asked. And I don't ever like going up against Dana and Cliff on anything.
Well, thank you for your input. Now, that was the last person to sign up to speak. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak on this item? We're here in the front row first.
My name is Jim Sumter, spelled S-U-M-P-T-E-R. I live at 260 Cypress Drive. I was sworn in.
Okay.
I am the president of the board of directors of Cypress Dunes Association, so I speak from the heart, having owned in that community as well for the last 12 years. I've had the benefit of knowing Cole and Mike both as neighbors as well as developers of the location. We moved there the day after Hurricane Katrina from New Orleans, so our evacuation plan was to go from hot to hotter. I can just echo the statement made by Emerald Walk in that the community of Cypress Dunes Board of Directors fully, emphatically, and strongly supports this project from the perspective that we do know of other proposals that have come around and gone from this site. We know that development is progress and that development is coming, and we feel that this is a wonderful partnership with regards to the product that they have already put in place in Cypress Dunes. They have maintained ownership in Cypress Dunes and have been stewards of the process. They're good people. And we feel that this development will benefit the public and benefit the communities in a very positive and beneficial way.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lady back in the corner.
Hi, my name is Stacy Fershner, and I have not been sworn in. I don't know what I can do.
Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide to this board will be the truth?
I do.
Now spell your last name.
It's F-R-O-E-S-C-H-N-E-R.
Okay.
Okay. Hello, thank you for hearing me. I am currently residing at Beachview Heights, 122 Sunset Avenue, which is the community 2 down from Cypress Dunes. I was born there. My parents live there. I currently live in my grandfather's house, who's passed away, so we have 2 properties in the area. I lived most of my life in South Walton. So I got up to go to work this morning at 4 a.m. and I heard about this meeting and I heard about this property development, this proposal. So it was the first I was hearing about it, and it was a little bit of a shock because it is a lot of property and a lot of expectations for a small amount of land. I think that, again, I don't know about density levels and all that stuff, but if you look at the way 30A is changed over the years, I think that it's kind of odd that our seal says preservation and conservation, because that's not where the county seems to be going. I think that for those folks who are trying to sell their property or maybe have their homes up for sale, or maybe they're looking to increase property values around this area, this might be a positive thing for them. They, you can offer this on your as a selling point, possibly. But I think for those people who actually reside in this county, who plan on staying here, who take pride in their county and the land around here, this will not benefit us. I do not think that having increased restaurants and increased stores and all that stuff is really the only thing that can benefit a community. You can offer parks, you can offer, something maybe smaller. Even I'm not, saying they shouldn't build there, because I've heard a lot of people say tonight that this is better than what we've had in the past proposed. That's a little bit unfortunate. We have to settle for something that we're just saying, oh, maybe it's better than what we've had before. I don't know that that's a positive direction either. Maybe we should set our expectations higher as a community. If we don't want this kind of thing, let's say we don't want it and do better. Don't just settle because there's been worse proposals. I mean, I remember when they tried to do the ball fields, and it was a big thing because, yeah, that was kind of going to be an impact. Now, the second thing, and I know I'm rambling, but this is a very precious piece of land that butts up to it behind there. Topsail Preserve is very important to this community, and I know that this isn't in the preserve, but I think we have to remember construction does impact around it, and so when we're thinking about water drainage and where is all this concrete going to move the water to around it and that kind of stuff. I know I'm not an expert in this area, but I do think that's been an area of problems throughout the community, water runoff and such. You have flooding in various areas because when you concrete things, flooding happens around it. So I think that's important to remember, and I would just say that this is too much for this piece of property. Can we just take it down some and think about that? And thank you.
Who else had their hand up? Yes, sir.
Thank you. Fred Tricker, Tricker. I was sworn in.
Okay.
I just got a few questions. One of them, I guess, relates to the notice that was given for this meeting, and there was some documentation that wasn't provided on the website, and that's a concern. I did get a document called a PUD document that the planning staff was good enough to send to me. That should be available to everybody. Had information on variances, had the traffic report I think that you all were looking for. And I don't know how you can do a meeting like this, which, by the way, wasn't advertised as a PUD development. It was advertised as a major development order. Okay. So anyway, that's a concern. The big question I think I have is on the density issue. And, I heard people say that, well, this project complies with the comprehensive plan, land development code. I wish they wouldn't say that, because there are some deviations, and to me the most significant one is the density one. And just looking at the documentation, which again is in this the PUD document, talks about the density. The density is actually twice as much as it is in the neighboring properties. The lot sizes are about half the size. So I don't get it. The setbacks are significantly smaller. So to me, they're not comparable. But I guess the big problem I have is if we're asking for 5-foot setbacks everywhere, what's the justification for that? Where's the justification? Is it simply to put more square footage on the lot sizes that are available? Or is there some justification for it? If there's not, why on earth would we put this forward? We got standards. What are the standards for if we're not going to follow them? So this is not in compliance with the land development code. It's not even close.
Okay.
So that's.
We'll let the developer answer the questions on density and that stuff, lot size.
Yeah,
he presented information earlier that
right.
I think is different than what you have.
Yeah, I'm looking specifically at pages 7 and 8 of the compatibility part of this document.
Okay.
And it's got tables, and it's really clear from those tables. It doesn't say what I heard the developer say.
Okay.
So I could be wrong.
All right.
I was wrong once before.
We'll have it answered.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am?
Hi, my name is Donna Johns, Johns. I've lived in this area a very long time, and I've watched 30A grow for years. And I personally do not like to drive to the seaside area because of the congestion. Now, I've always liked the west end of 30A because you don't have all of that. And my concern is several things. Number one, as Fred was just mentioning, the setback thing. We're cramming in what seems to be an awful lot of homes into this small area. And I don't understand why we need to give a deviation on the setbacks. Why can't we stick with our standard 7.5 and 15 like the rest of us have. It just seems like to me, I understand that you do a nice product, and I appreciate the fact that they do a nice product, but if they could just spread it out a little more, because when it comes to parking, you know, you've got that many homes in there, and it doesn't sound like there's going to be a whole lot of room for parking. And they can nobody has one car. Everybody's got 2 or 3, and then their friends come, and there's all kinds of cars. And 30A also has a big problem in other areas with restaurants that don't have the appropriate parking. And I just can't imagine that there's going to be enough parking for the restaurants and the retail and everything else. And another big concern, well, about the setbacks, I think I heard someone mention that instead of the children playing in the streets, that they were going to be playing between the houses. Well, really? You want the kids to be playing between your houses when you've only got a 5-foot setback? I personally wouldn't like that.
I think what they're talking about is actually have trails behind the houses that are designed for that.
Okay.
That's what the trails are for.
Okay.
I mean, just
I thought-
for
okay.
clarification.
Okay.
And they're not in the setbacks.
Yeah, they're not in the setback.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah. As far as parking, I mean, they meet the requirements of the code, actually exceed the requirements of the code for parking. So,
For the homes?
yes, the whole project.
How many parking places do they have for each home?
Mr. Matthews?
Parking is,
You said 2 a while ago.
Yeah, I think he said 2 per house.
2
as long
per
as it's
house.
a 3-bedroom.
I can answer that.
Yeah.
We have, as part of y'all's application package, this is the entire parking analysis for the entire site. And you're asking about the lots. You've got 120 spaces for the twins, and another 93, 27. I mean, you'd have to go through the whole thing. It's 334 spaces total. I'd have to,
So it's-
lots of different, and there's no parking on the streets.
Right. They have, Cliff, am I right? It was 2 per residence, 2 parking places not on the street, off the street.
Yes, sir, that's correct. And if there were a 3-bedroom house, for example, there's additional spaces that'll be required for that
Right.
residence.
Right.
Well, in my neighborhood, they don't park like that.
Well, there's a
Unfortunately.
lot of neighborhoods that don't park like that.
Right, and you say no street parking, and I, you know, it just seems like it's just way too dense. It just seems to me like if they could spread things out a little bit, it sounds like they've got a beautiful plan and everything, if they could spread it out. The other thing I wanted to mention is, what about the school? Is the elementary school there, is it already at level? I mean, do they even have the capacity for more children? And if you're going to bring in that many homes, how many more children are you going to be bringing in to go to that school? Do we even have the capacity for
I
that?
think that we got a letter from, right?
Bob.
Bob?
And I guess my main point is, we can't start over. Once it's built, it's built. And I can see the trucks coming in to bring deliveries, along with the school buses, along with the golf carts, along with the cars. Oh, my.
Well, and
What a mess.
I think as far as the deliveries, I have the same concerns you do, okay? But I think as far as the deliveries, they can control that. That's easy to control from a development standpoint. Buses, we can't control.
Right.
I mean, and cars, they're gonna be what they are.
Right.
But you have to have some type of standard to measure those things. And I think that's what a developer has to rely on. That's what we have to rely on, because I'm not a traffic expert by any stretch.
Well, I'm an expert when I'm stuck in it.
Me and you both. And that's why I don't go down to the other end of 38 very often.
Right, right.
But at some point, I mean, people do have rights on property they own. And that's why we try to control, what we can, making sure that it does fit by code.
Right.
Which is all we can do. If it doesn't fit by code, then that's different. But of course, we just make a recommendation. That's all we can do. The county commissioners actually make decisions. They get paid for it.
Can you recommend that they don't get the deviation on the setbacks?
Well, we'll talk about that, I'm sure.
Okay. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
I appreciate it.
Bob, you have the answer on the,
The school board did not comment, but when they do comment, they typically say that they will make adjustments to houses that did
Right.
include additional students.
okay. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Amanda Schuette, SCHUETTE. I have not been sworn.
Okay. Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you will provide to this board will be the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I would like to start out by saying that not all of the residents of Emerald Walk, Flamingo Village, think that this project is the greatest thing since sliced bread.
I would be shocked if they did.
Yes, and I think the reason that they don't is because until the sign went up notifying people that there was a major development happening, they didn't know about it. And I have to say I'm a little hacked off to hear that the Homeowners Association has been meeting with them and approving plans, not informing any of us despite the various methods of communication we have set up with this. My biggest concern with this project are the same as the major concerns I had with the previous project that was proposed for this site. The problem with that project was that they wanted to greatly increase the density, they wanted to greatly change the drainage, and they wanted to elevate the entire property multiple feet that would greatly change the flooding and drainage concerns for the entire area. I'm sure that they want to put in a first-class project. No developer starts out and says, you know what, I think a crappy house would look great here and it would really sell well. Unfortunately, just because they've done well in the past or people seem to like them is not a guarantee of what will happen, especially if they just have an approved project. They can sell that to somebody else. For some reason, they might not do exactly what they say in the meetings. But my biggest concern is they want to raise 22 acres right across the street from where I live, 3 to 5 feet. And then they want to develop that 4 times as dense as where I live. And they want to tell me that's going to improve my quality of life. And I guarantee you, I don't think it will. Now, I think this is a great plan. I love the fact that it's got multiple entrances. I think a lot of the traffic problems on 30A are because of all the cul-de-sacs and only one way in, one way out. My biggest concern is that it's just overbuilt and the stormwater issues. If this was held to the basic setbacks that we already have, that my house complies to, that your houses comply to, I think it would really resolve a lot of the traffic and density concerns that people have. There's no reason to have a 5-foot front, 5-foot side, and 5-foot rear setback. That means you can't really have a yard. It means almost all of your yard is a solid house that doesn't drain and causes problems. There's no reason for this to not be a good project. It's just too dense and it needs to just take a step back. Based on the density of this project, my single-family house across the street should be 2 4-story duplexes with multiple units in them. I don't think that's really a compatible density. However, if each of those home sites, or if every 2 of those home sites was 1 lot, I think it would be a very nice neighborhood to live in, and I think it would be far more compatible with the rest of the neighborhood. But I would like to know why they want to raise the elevation of the entire property more than 3 feet.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll get that answered for you. Anybody else? You want a second shot at the apple, huh?
I just have a question because it's something she brought up. She just mentioned that the density is totally different than where she lives across the street, but I thought when they made their presentation...
We'll get there.
Okay.
We'll get that answered.
Thank you.
Is that anybody else? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Mr. Matthews?
Yes, sir. I'd like Ken Metcalf, who prepared the compatibility report that was accepted by the county, that studied the neighborhood, to be able to address the questions about comparable lot sizes between Flamingo, Cypress 1, Cypress 2, and our project, as well as the RDU, the density per acre issue. Those are the 2 issues that I've heard.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Ken Metcalf. I'm the Director of Planning with Stearns Weaver in Tallahassee.
Were you sworn in, sir?
Yes, yes. So I think it's important when we talk about density, and everybody focuses on density as sort of the key metric, right? That's the number people tend to get focused on. The other D word is design, and it makes a big difference. If you look at the numbers that we've run, yes, if you compare the density of this project as a whole to the density in the quarter-mile area around it that we have to study, it's higher. The gentleman's right. My report confirms it's about double. But when you look at the density of the single-family homes within this project, very comparable. The density of the single-family homes is 3.4 units per acre. It's essentially the same as Cypress Phase 2. If you take out the conservation lands that are in Cypress Phase 2, they're the same size lots. Certainly it's denser than Flamingo, no question about that. But Flamingo's all the way across on the other side of the road. We did an analysis to look at, if you look at the closest homes in Flamingo Village, and you run what we call a sightline analysis. Imagine you're standing, or those folks are standing at their back porch, looking over at the project. Their line of sight angle is 20 degrees. So think about what that means. So, 45 degrees, right? It's basically a diagonal angle. 20 degrees is less than half that. Their line of sight will be lower looking at that 4-story building than it would be looking at a 2-story home next to them. It's also important to keep in mind your comprehensive plan and code allow 4 stories in a residential multifamily project 50 feet away. Let's not forget that, 50 feet away. If you looked at the line of sight for a residential project just 50 feet away, it would be, you'd be looking up, right? Here we're looking at a very low angle. They also, of course, have a fence that runs along Flamingo that will help buffer this. That's common. So I think you have to put these issues in perspective. Our density is, you would consider the overall density to be a medium density. So if you compare the neighborhoods, Flamingo is considered a low density neighborhood at 2.8 units per acre. This project is at the low end of a medium density neighborhood at a little over 6 units per acre. And typically when you do zoning analysis, you try to have a transition. And you've probably heard this from other planners before. You transition from low to medium, medium to high. That's all that's occurring here, is we have a transition from low density to a medium density category. If that's not compatible, basically you can never change land use categories. You could never have a subdivision next to another subdivision unless they were exactly the same. And there's some places around the state that are designed just that way. I'm sure you've probably driven in some of these areas where you find these cookie cutter platted lots, right? They have them over in Palm Coast, if you've been to the city of Palm Coast, or down in the southwest area of the state, Charlotte. Mile after mile of quarter-acre subdivisions. I mean, it's so monotonous, it's incredible. And so, density is not a bad thing at all. The issue is how is the design handled? Now, I understand the traffic concern, and I just have 2 comments about that because it is part of the compatibility analysis that we do. First, I think it's important to keep in mind that when you look at traffic, you have to look at the level of service that the county's adopted. Your level of service standard is D. In front of this project, with the trips added from this project, you're going to be at 70% of your level of service standard. And I know you get into, you have your perception of traffic, and that's fine. Everybody does. No one likes to sit in traffic. But keep in mind, we're at 70% of the county's standard, the standard you've adopted for doing these sort of reviews. And I think that's important. From a practical standpoint, I lived down in the Keys for many years. It's very comparable, right? If you've been down to the Keys, you've got these long stretches of 2-lane roads. And I can tell you, access control is the key. And one of the folks mentioned it earlier, where there's uncontrolled access and people are parking everywhere all over the right-of-way, that slows down traffic. People get concerned that somebody's going to pull out, rear end them. That's when they get concerned. The traffic slows down. It's typically the new developments that actually have very well-controlled access, and the traffic flows fine. It was always that way in the Keys. Every place that they couldn't get a handle on existing properties where people were scrambling all over the property and all over the right-of-way, that's where they had the problem. So you mentioned, well, what's the long-term solution? I think the long-term solution is to try to work, and it's difficult. I'm not saying it's easy, but to try to provide some incentives maybe to those existing property owners to clean up the way that their access works. The county's adopted very good standards for how new development access works. It's the existing ones that you have to try to clean up.
Okay.
Wait a minute.
Quick question for you.
Maybe not so quick.
That's all right.
So you're saying that across the street doesn't matter, and as far as density and as far as compatibility, that lady's concerns shouldn't be addressed?
No, I didn't say it didn't matter. I'm saying your standard for is one neighborhood compatible with another, and I can read you the definition in your comprehensive plan, but I want to be more practical for you.
You said there were 2.8, and this is 6 point, and that's compatible?
Yes, that's very compatible. It's very common. The best example of it is right next to this project. If you compare Cypress Phase 1 and Cypress Phase 2, it's about that same difference.
And this project's got commercial and a lot of other mixed uses. So this isn't apples to apples, this is apples to oranges, because unless I'm wrong, Flamingo is all residential. There's no commercial in there.
Well, that's right.
So
this is a limited amount of commercial, but I think from a compatibility standpoint, you have to look at how the design works. One of the changes they made that I think is very helpful is you have two buildings. Instead of one large building with a wide face, which kind of creates more of a massing and more of a visual impact, you have it divided into two buildings. And the effect of that is you don't get the massing perception that you otherwise might get.
And the other part of this, they're asking for a deviation for access. You just said controlling access helps with traffic. Well, how do you explain asking for an extra access?
Well, these are still very controlled access points, and I think the key are the turn lanes. That's what we found in the Keys. If you can get the turn lanes in, that's what keeps traffic flowing. And that's the best you can do on a 2-lane road in a tourism kind of community. If you can't take that approach, you really don't have any other alternative. If you only build low density housing, if that's all you ever build along the roadway, then basically you're sending those folks down the road just to get a little bit of milk, to get a cup of coffee. They're driving up and down the road. So if you don't have some commercial nodes here and there, you're creating what we call extra long trip links. You're sending them on extra long trips unnecessarily. And the way that you sort of try to, as a planner, the way you try to avoid that problem is you have selective nodes where you have some commercial use.
The Topsail PUD is half a mile down the road on 30. It's got hundreds of thousands of square feet it's already been approved. So how does that affect the need for commercial here?
Well, on this side of the road, basically you just have, you have Elmo's. You do have commercial on the other side at Topsail that's been approved. Over time, as that develops, you'll end up having two nodes. This one's a small amount. I mean, you put it in perspective, it's a very small amount of commercial. I think it's also important to note that the traffic analysis is based on a non-fast food type restaurant. There won't be any fast food restaurants in this facility. The traffic's been run on what we call a medium type restaurant, a sit-down restaurant. It's not based on a high turnover that you get with a fast food situation. But I'm not disputing there's going to be some traffic coming out of this project. If you run the numbers, it comes out to about 4 cars an hour, or 4 cars a minute. You know, that's about what it comes out to, about 4 cars a minute.
That's peak PM?
That's PM peak, and, you know, 2 of those are going one direction, 2 are going the other. I think the stacking that you'll have at your turn lanes will be adequate, especially if they're able to just stripe it and connect it. I mean, I think that's that's an operational issue. They can monitor if it appears that the turn lanes aren't stacking enough. They can certainly stripe it out, and they'll have plenty of stacking out there.
Anybody else? I see Cliff. That's closed. Public's closed. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cliff.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I could just briefly address Mr. Glidewell's question about the extra access.
Please do.
The reason that the additional access is important is because we don't want residential people that live in the subdivision stacking up behind the people that are going into the commercial as well. And so the residential will have their own access, the commercial will have its own access. It really makes traffic flow on 38 better because you don't have everybody stacked up in one lane going to the same place. And so it actually is a better scenario for 38 to have the extra access, really.
I see that.
And just the other thing I would mention, you know, there was some discussion about stormwater. Half the site currently discharges to 30A, half the site discharges away from 30A. We have 0 discharge back to 30A after this is developed. And so we're not discharging any water back to 30A, and we're providing 100-year pre-post for the entire site, which
That's all retained on site?
Yes, sir. It is. Yep. Okay. So it's pretty much the highest level of treatment that we can provide.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may just wrap it up with a few comments. This is probably the first meeting I've ever been to representing the developer where I've had the president of the board of directors for the associations for the 3 adjacent associations speak in favor and enthusiastically in favor of a project. Never had it happen before. Contrary to one of the last speakers, I don't know what happened between her and her association, but the neighborhood meetings weren't set up with the presidents of the association. They were set up by mail to the property owners within 300 feet, and those that chose to come came. The association board and other owners from all 3 associations showed up, and I had no idea these people were going to be here today, and I just feel interested because I live not very far from there. I live down West Hewitt. I'm very familiar with St. Joe's Topsail project. I'm very familiar with that side of 30A because I don't go to the east side of 30A either except during the wintertime. And I drive down by that school almost at least once or twice a week during school hours. And the bottom line is it would be nice to have I think, the neighborhood commercial aspect that this project offers on that side of 38 that's never been there before. I love Elmo's. Elmo was a good friend of mine. Sold his restaurant. Did a great job there. His buyers are doing a great job. But they're a non-conforming grandfathered in use. In the summertime, I went there, took my family over there one time, I think it was in the first part of August here, just a couple months ago. And the cars were all on the side of the road. They parking everywhere. There was an hour-and-a-half wait. I said, I'll be back in November. I mean, but it is what it is. I mean, and I agree with Mr. Metcalf, talking to different planners. The only way you're going to get non-conforming use people to make them conforming is to try to give them some incentives or something, because they're just not going to do it. And unfortunately, you're right. There's nothing you can do. And all my client can do is follow the Land Development Code and the comp plan. And that's why we have those standards, and I think that they've demonstrated that today. I mean, the public benefits, I think that, they can be debated. Anybody can debate it. Y'all can debate them. The county commission can debate them, but this developer obviously has a proven track record, and the number of the owners and the properties that they've developed adjacent have spoken about them today. They're talking about contributing over $680,000 in cash, not to mention the improvements that they're going to make to the roadway. there and underground utilities. Yes, they are seeking some variances, and I guess that's a debatable issue too. The staff has not had any problem with what we've submitted to you. I mean, we didn't just come to them and say, we want these variances and we're going to, I mean, this has all been negotiated, I say negotiated, offered and discussed, and this is what you have before you today. And your staff hasn't had any problems with it. Obviously, you have the right to make whatever recommendation that you so choose, but we believe that this project overall, and especially from a design standpoint, use standpoint, and something that is well wanted by the neighbors, other than one person in Flamingo, every other person up here that was in support were in the neighboring communities, and those that had issues or concerns, primarily about traffic, lived a little bit further down the road. All we can do is follow the county's rules on compatibility. You've got competent and substantial evidence that has been presented to you today through all these different expert reports and different testimony that would support the request that we've made. I know there was a comment by Ms. Cabina about millions of dollars being spent down there of county money trying to fix the Seagrove traffic problem. I don't know the numbers. I know the county has spent a bunch of money down there, but you know where that money came from? Prop share. I mean, that's the purpose of prop share, is if you have an impact at all on the roadways and you meet the calculations, the methodologies, you contribute the money, and the county gets to decide where that money is spent with their roadway improvement projects. And so that's why some of these old non-conforming, some of the traffic issues, you know, hopefully will be alleviated to some extent. I mean, we have a problem with a 17-mile road that's 2-lane. I don't know what to say about that. Anyway, somebody else made a comment that we don't have any property rights because my client doesn't own the property. That's absolutely an incorrect statement. Ms. Noyes will tell you that. We have a contract with the property owner. We have an agency power of attorney and authority to file for development order application by the owner of the property, and any developer or applicant that appears before this county and goes through this process has developer rights associated with it. Anyway, I appreciate your time. I know we've been here a long time on this one project. I'm willing to answer any questions that you might have.
Commissioners? Yes, sir.
I have a question. Is the developer actually going to build these houses, or is there going to be spec builders buying lots?
It'll probably be a control. What they did in Cypress and what will be done in this project is that there will be a vetting of GCs that will be on an approved list, and if you're not on the list, you're not going to be building in there. The developer is going to have control, architectural control over the entire design of any building, anything that gets built, as well as the qualifications and the bondability of any GC that comes in on the project. I don't know if that answers your question. I mean, the developer himself actually doing the construction, no, they will have selected contractors.
So typically, like, someone can come in, say, I could buy a lot, and I could hire a general contractor to build something. That's generally the way it works?
Nope, no? not in this project.
That's on the list.
And I've done several others. I mean, I've represented several developers, and we have controlled covenants and restrictions that actually require you to use an approved builder that is approved by the developer. That is on a list, and there's a qualifications that they have to vet before they can be approved. And so you know, as an owner, before you even buy a lot, that you have to go and use one.
It'd be similar, like Rosemary Beach or something like that.
Very similar.
Okay.
Very, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Commissioners, anybody else?
I do have a question for staff.
Thank you.
Okay, and is this business, these 21-foot wide roadways, and then you also have the 34-foot wide right-of-way. Do we use that anywhere else in the county? I mean, in the south portion of Walton County.
Yeah, well, I would definitely say that probably some of our larger new urbanist communities have smaller street widths. Absolutely.
Okay, and then another question I have is, I'm familiar with these 5-foot side setbacks, but I've rarely seen the front and rear setbacks being so, like 5 foot.
Setbacks, and we've talked a lot about this tonight, and setbacks are generally there for uniformity. So, back in the days, they were there for space and light and fire protection, but today they're more so developed for uniformity. So you wouldn't want to have like a sawtooth pattern going down a road or down a corner as you're driving down the road. And in a development like this where he obviously has established uniformity, though yes, there are smaller setbacks, but again, the design of the development is consistent.
I'm going to show some ignorance real quick. With a 5-foot setback, where is the parking? I mean, how do you put parking?
You want to show your diagram?
And it's a question that I think may answer some questions.
Yes, sir. Just briefly, your question about the right-of-way and the roadway width, they're all private roads, and so we're not asking to dedicate them to the county at all. And the 35-foot does give us adequate room for utilities, stormwater, adequate width of travel lanes and all those types of things. If we were going to do it by the county standards, I think we'd have to have, 50 feet, I believe, to meet the county standards.
Be 50 feet.
Yes, sir. And so our plan is to keep them all private and not dedicate them to the county. If that helps, I don't know if that helps.
That works for me.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, your question about the 5-foot front setback, what we found is that even though you have a 5-foot front setback, not a lot of people build their house all the way at the 5-foot front setback. A lot of people will set their houses further back. These lots are big enough that you don't have to use every square foot of the lot to build your house. And so if there's 2 houses existing and you want to have a side porch, you're able to move it to one side of your lot and have more room on the other side of the lot if that's what your desire was on that lot. And so it's not necessarily that every builder is going to use every square foot of each of these lots, because they're fairly good sized lots. If you were to take the lot and set it back 5 feet all the way around, you'd be building a very substantial house. And so the idea isn't necessarily that you're going to use every square foot, but it gives you some ability to move the house closer to the back. If you want to have more parking in the front, for example, your question about the 5 feet in the front, you're not going to fit a car between the 5 foot and the roadway, obviously, but you could have a house with a garage. And if you didn't want to have a garage and you wanted open parking, you'd move your house to the back where you have the rear 5-foot setback, and you'd afford yourself much more room in the front to have parking off street. And so it really gives you more flexibility with your lots than anything.
Well, that's the question, because I think when people see a 5-foot setback in the front,
right?
I mean, how can you possibly have parking?
Right.
If
That's
you
right.
have a 5-foot space there, because
right.
Even a daggum smart car is smaller,
Right.
bigger than 5 feet.
Right.
You know.
So that would be a house with a garage.
There ain't no
certainly.
such thing as a multimodal something that's under 5 feet long.
Right.
I won't get me and my wife in, so.
That would be a house with a garage, obviously.
Right.
And so we do have a few other spaces that are spread out in the subdivision outside of the houses themselves that could be used for the air conditioning guy or the
Repair people or
repairman
service
or
people.
whatever else. There's other spaces in the subdivision. that
So
they
they
can
are
use.
required, regardless of what the setback is to provide 2 parking spaces per house.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Is there a size limit on those parking spaces?
A size limit? Well,
How big do they have to be?
I think the code requires 9 by 20.
Okay.
Is what the code requires.
Okay.
So
that was what would be required per house?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay.
Another question I had regarding the setbacks and then the pervious area. If you were to actually build a house that went right to the setbacks,
Yes,
would
sir.
you exceed your pervious area?
No, actually, that's what we did to come up with our curve numbers in our stormwater analysis. Is we maxed out the setbacks on the entire subdivision, and so we also added driveways to that as well. Because if you only use the setbacks and don't account for the driveways, you're short also. And so basically, we went to the rear setbacks and ran that all the way to the roadway. Is how we used our curve numbers for the stormwater. So we're in great shape with stormwater. We typically don't back ourselves into a hole on that.
Okay.
Thank you guys for the
Well,
opportunity.
Just a minute, okay?
Yes, sir.
We ain't quite done with you yet. But I think that the explanation you just gave on the setbacks is very helpful to me, I know, because I had some serious questions about that.
Yes, sir.
I think it's just perception when you see it on paper and you see that number. that really scares people.
Yep.
You know, but you've answered my question very
Yep.
well.
Yeah, and I would just say from experience, if you go to look at Cypress Phase 1 or Cypress Phase 2, there's very few houses in there that used every bit of the entire lot within those 5-foot setbacks. Right. I mean, almost nobody. Right. And so it gives you more flexibility with your house plan.
Okay. My next question would be for Mr. Matthews, and I don't know if there's a way to do it or not. I know it's been discussed with other projects that we've looked at, not recently, but is there a way that you can restrict this project from short-term rentals?
Yes.
Is that something the developer would be willing to do?
I don't know. We haven't gone to market on anything.
Because I think that creates a huge problem. The short-term rentals, I think, create a lot of the problems on 30A, where you have people coming and going continuously, and they don't know the rules, they don't care about the rules. They're renting a place for 7 days, and by God, I'm gonna get my 7 days worth. I would like to see, in fact, I will probably propose to whatever motion's made, that we request that. Because on the single-family units is what I'm talking about. Because on the single-family units, if you have those as short-term rentals, I think that creates a whole different level of problem for any neighborhood.
Mr. Chairman, just to jump in, I mean, that's something, obviously, if the developer would agree
Right.
to it, that we could request, but I don't think that we could make that a requirement.
Okay. I know they can, on their end. They can do it in their documents.
Right, yes, sir.
Yes, it absolutely can be done. Matter of fact, I've got a project right now that we made rental restrictions.
And I don't
6
think
months or
that,
higher.
you know, if someone's gonna be here for 6 months, or even snowbirds who come for 4 months, I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem is the less than probably a month rentals, where it's truly short term, that create the issues that we see in a lot of areas of 38. My opinions.
Well, I mean, if you want to take a break, I'll talk to my client. I mean, it's something that I know. As an example, I told you we have a project right now. It's called Ridgecrest. It's on 393 up on the hill on the left, 73 lots. My client actually, after we finally got done and got our CO and everything else, and we go to record our plat and our CCRs, we allowed short-term rentals because that's what we were convinced, or my clients were convinced, in talking with the real estate community up and down 30A, that that's what they needed to do. And after 6 months, they decided no. And we went back and amended the CCRs, and the lots that we had sold, the people signed off and joined in consent, and now we made it rental restriction. And actually, the sales have been very good in the last 4 months. So it really depends on what the market is, and at any given point in time. I know that Mr. Forsyth and his partner have done a lot of market analysis, but I don't know that they've made that decision. But if you want me to take a few minute break, I'll talk to them.
Let's do it. Let's take about 10 minutes.
Right.
I don't think we're in a big rush tonight, so.
I've been forcing myself to, but I'm still getting up. I don't get out real early. I do a lot of stuff in the house before I leave, so I get up. Yeah, I get up and start working on stuff. You can make coffee and start working. What? You grew up in
Don't hold that against him, though.
No, I can't go back if that's what you're asking.
Well, I just picture it. Do you ever know Kale's K-A-L?
No, I don't think I did.
Okay, let's wrap it up.
So the price.
You just let me know when you're ready. No, it didn't.
Lost his magic.
We got the important people here, though. You ready? Okay, we'll go ahead and resume.
Okay. All I know to do is just be honest with you.
That's what you gotta do.
You can't make a commitment. There's millions of dollars going to be involved in this project. I can tell you what the developer's intent is. And if you look at the design, I think it supports what I'm telling you. This is being designed as a permanent, single-family home, second home market. That's the way, that's the theme and the design of the community. But we cannot make any commitments at this point. We don't have construction, financing lined up for it. We don't know what we're going to a bank to tell them we got a DO for. Doesn't know what the market will be in 9 months, and just not willing and can't make that commitment at this point in time. That's all I can tell you.
Okay.
Well, isn't that gonna primarily affect the people within the community, and they're gonna know that going in if it's gonna be?
Absolutely. That's the other thing. I mean, it's either, this conversation that we're having is going on all up and down 30A right now, and it has been probably for a good 18 months to 2 years now. And that's why, like this one developer client I told you, decided to go and say, we don't want to have short-term, because their consumer demand was telling them in their little 73-lot subdivision that we don't want to have that. And the realtors are saying, we think that if you do not allow anything less than 6 months, that we can sell your product. You got other communities that are more inclined to have short-term rentals because of their proximity to the beach, the type of amenities, whatever. We just don't know at this point.
Well, I would think that.
But everything will be disclosed. That's the one thing I want to make sure you understand. Every project I'm involved in with good developers like this is everything is disclosed up front in your purchase agreements with your buyers. They have their CCRs that are, well, covenants, conditions, restrictions attached, their association budgets, their bylaws, rules and regulations, architectural review guidelines. All that is part of a purchase contract. And our agents are trained to teach the buyer. You don't just give them a package and say, have a nice day. I mean, we want our buyers to be educated, and this project will be done that way, very professionally. That's all I can tell you.
Good, honest answer. I like that.
All I can do.
Anybody else have any questions for anybody? Commissioners, discussion? Thoughts?
Well, first of all, I like the commercial part of this. I had no problem with, I think your buildings are beautiful. I mean, at least the drawings are, a lot better than I can draw. But I don't see any real benefit to the public in these setback changes. And regardless of how you want to dress it up, a pig with lipstick's still a pig. And when you change these, this does not meet the Land Development Code. The Land Development Code has very specific restrictions on setbacks, and this doesn't meet it. So that's my first problem. The second one, I don't like the deviation on the roads, because the county has had trouble time after time. I mean, what we want to say is the perfect world today doesn't mean that 10, 15, 20 years from now somebody's not going to be in front of a county commission wanting to give these roads or get their roads fixed or whatever. And it's been a constant problem in this county for years. So I don't like that. The third thing I really don't like is getting in the right of way, because all along 30A we have, all you hear is time after time after time about people getting in and saying, well, if the county needs the right of way, they can come back. That has never worked. It's always a problem, and we're setting ourselves up for failure in the future by allowing any more of that stuff. I am dead set against putting anything in the right of way that's not county driven, because the problems it causes, if you go down on the east side of 30A, it causes issues upon issue upon issue. And at some point, we've got to stop creating issues for the future. It absolutely does not work to keep compounding problems. So, like I said, the commercial part of your project, I don't have any problem with. But I don't like the setbacks, I don't like the roads, and I am absolutely positively against putting anything in that right of way. That's where I'm at.
I would just briefly on the right of way issue, just to hopefully alleviate some of your concerns. If they were to make any of the developments in the right-of-way, we would have a right-of-way agreement that'd be executed by the board. And the last one we did, we made it explicitly clear that any improvements could be removed by Public Works at any time for any reason. So that's one thing we can do to address that.
Has that been done in the past, Sydney, or is that?
Yes, sir, we actually just did one for the Kaya PUD.
Mhm.
They came through, as you guys remember, a couple of years
Mhm.
ago, but they just recently came back through to get their right-of-way agreement.
Has there ever anyone made them take it up?
Not yet, but
There
we
it
do
is.
have the ability to do that under our
Well, aren't we
agreement.
just talking about landscaping?
Yes, I believe that's.
Which they're paying a lot of money to put landscaping up and down 98 now anyway, so this saves the county money if they're planning on doing any landscaping out there.
That is the only thing that'll be in the right of way is landscaping, right?
Yes, sir, in connection of the sidewalk and the trolley. We're extending the sidewalk from phase one,
Mm-hmm.
and we're putting the trolley stop.
In the right of way.
Yes, sir.
And the sidewalks is wonderful. The trolley I really like. But I'm not a big fan of
Landscaping?
I like the landscaping if the county does it.
Dan, you don't like trees?
Put it on their own property.
I love trees, but what I'm saying is I've never seen the county go back and fix that. And now we're having all these battles up and down 30A about, I mean, y'all know the developments I'm talking about. And so it just seems like that's creating a problem for the future that there's no real need to create.
I see the concern, but I think as long as there's a solid agreement that allows the county to do what they need to do in its landscaping, I mean, I can understand. And I can tell you, I have real issue with setbacks, but I think that my concerns have been addressed. I feel comfortable with how it has to be done and the way it will be done, and the way that it was explained to me. So, traffic is always going to be a problem on 30A. I don't think, unless you find a way to build 4 lanes going up and down there, you'll ever alleviate it. I don't think you'd alleviate it with 4 lanes. I think it would just grow to fill that up as well. But no, and I think that 30A is a unique area that the county is, looking at long-term solutions for traffic, and I think that this developer has done everything they can do to try to minimize what impacts there will be. I don't think the concern will ever go away. I think it's always going to be there, and I think traffic is always going to be a problem on 30A in the summertime. So,
I know that, like I said, the problem with setbacks is the code has specific one, and the more you build roofs,
mm-hmm.
and the less pervious area you have, the more danger there is of the flood where we have 30A and 98 underwater. At some point, if the setbacks are wrong in the code should be fixed. But
Well, I think that's what PUDs do, is give them the ability to
I think
adjust
that's what a PUD's
those.
designed
That's what
for.
PUD's designed for.
But that's a loophole big enough to.
well, I mean, that's why you have a PUD.
It's also why they've done their stormwater for
Yeah.
100 years, so that they've got that under control.
And I think that, their stormwater is beyond what's required. And, I don't think any of us up here are engineers that can tell them they're wrong. You have to at some point say that the engineers wouldn't know what they're doing, so.
I've been listening to all these people in favor of it. And my only point of reference is I've seen the hub. And this is far superior to the hub.
Mm-hmm.
A lot better.
Well, I think. Because you're talking to your microphone.
In my frame of reference, to compare this project to is the hub on 30A. And this looks a lot better than the hub. And it was done by D.R. Horton. Now, and you may be comparing apples and oranges here, but it's the same style of commercial and residential together. And they got houses together. Now, These folks are trying to do a lot better, nicer job than what they did down there. I mean, it just looks better.
Oh, they're also not maximizing their density that they could at 8 units per acre, and, you know, if somebody came in there and tried to do that, you would have a mess as far as
Exactly.
traffic and other problems with stormwater. So I think they've gone to a lot of trouble to try to make this something that's gonna work for the community around them. And, I don't know, I like it. I think they've done a good job with it. It's not perfect. There's not gonna ever be one that's perfect. Nobody's gonna be happy with everything. But when they compromise like they look like they have, I think you gotta, you know, give them some credit and, let them move on.
And I think anytime you have a development of this size on 38, and there's more people speaking for it than against it, somebody's done something right.
Yep.
Because, like I said, you're not ever gonna please everybody, no matter what you do.
Nope. I make a motion to approve.
We have a motion?
With the conditions from the planning department.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. We have one item left on the agenda.
Thank you.
Planning Commission, if y'all would hold it down where we can get this last item done, it's gonna be a quickie.
Thank you, Danny. Care about the area.
What'd she say?
I don't really care. We have an agenda, meeting schedule for next year we need to approve?
Oh, yeah.
Who's got it? Where's it at?
It's in our package.
It's in our
I just already
package.
shut mine down.
Me too.
I think it's similar to what we have this year. It's
The second Tuesday,
a Thursday.
second Thursday, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing.
Need a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We got a motion and a second to approve meeting schedule. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. We stand adjourned. Nope. Oh, you know what? I almost forgot.
We need to recognize George and his service, since this is his last.
Oh, that's
meeting.
right.
Yeah, he snuck up on us. He didn't even tell us until the meeting started that he was leaving.
George last minute.
I would like to thank you, George, for your service, and your willingness to be here and to participate.
Congratulations on surviving.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
I appreciate all your hard work. This is not for the line of heart.
No, it's not.
We're sure gonna miss you. You always have a lot of good input. I appreciate you.
Now we stand adjourned.
Now we stand. If we'd have known in time, we'd have got you.
We had cake and.
Yeah, some flowers.